I feel like this season was more like arc focused as opposed to like individual episodes. So like we'll drop down, but it will sort of be in the service of the larger arcs that are being told.
This is going to be really fun. I also suspect
we won't have like 45 minutes of discussion before we even get to episode 1. So I think
that's also true.
Let's not jinx it.
And welcome back to the Men of Steel podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jmike Folson.
Hello there. What's up, Case?
Not much. We are digging back into my adventures with Superman. Season 2 just wrapped. You know what that means? We are once again joined by, from Overly Sarcastic Productions, we've got Red.
Hello. There was a hello there, and I was going to do General Kenobi, but then the conversation continued.
I was waiting for somebody to do it, and no one did it.
I didn't want to interrupt because that would spoil that we were there, but everyone needs to know that that's what I wanted to do.
And of course, we also are joined by Blue.
And I have to say, Jmike, you are a bold one.
Thank you, sir.
The deeper pull.
Hot on the heels of season 1, season 2 from My Adventures with Superman came out.
So good.
And we had such a great conversation about the first season. I wanted to have the two of you back on for this one. Before we get into any kind of thoughts, Red, I have to tip my hat to you for your excellent forecasting of the Black Mercy.
Thank you. Yeah. I guess a little inside baseball. I was watching the season as it aired, but I started around episode 4. I was like, uh-oh. They're doing some things I find annoying. And if I find this annoying, my dad will find it unwatchable. And I was like texting him like, if you haven't started it yet, you might want to hold off. So I was like kind of giving him weekly updates of like, they're doing this thing. I think they're going to resolve it this way. And like my dad is a writer, so he was like right there with me. We were kind of throwing ideas back and forth. But I was like mid-composing text of like, yeah, I mean, it's just going to be so annoying if they do the evil Superman ruins his reputation thing that they did in the season finale for Superman the Animated Series. And then like mid-rant, I was like, but wait. Hang on. What if they're setting up a different deep pull? And I was very, very pleased to be completely correct about that because it was the least annoying approach they could have taken.
Yeah, this season loved having some deep pulls in there. There's also the Black Zero protocol at the very end, which is a nice deep cut also to some Superman lore stuff. Black Zero in post-crisis continuity was a terrorist group for Kryptonians, and it was something in pre-crisis, but I forget specifically what. But also not a good thing from Krypton.
Yeah, that's not really a good thing kind of name to have.
Nope.
It's a little ambiguously vague, but in an ominous way.
Activate the Kryptonian Manifest Destiny-tron 8000.
Well, that could do anything. Let's not assume. Oh, boy.
Yeah, this season went all in on the Krypton being... I've seen this comparison online. It's kind of Viltrumite-like from Invincible.
I think it's just because everyone's wearing white and everyone was like, hey, I know what that looks like from that other thing that was like a Superman pastiche. Who's making points about it.
Well, but they're all superpowered on their home world and they're, a conquering empire kind of thing. There's certainly comparisons to be made. I think it's the fact that this is where the zeitgeist is kind of going, just sort of generally in terms of like appreciation for alien cultures like that,
Yeah. Although I'll also say everything we learned about Krypton this season came through Brainiac.
Yeah.
And he cannot be trusted. Very specifically was
super true.
Putting forward a self-serving narrative wherein Krypton was fundamentally warlike and Brainiac's MO was the only way to do it, when we did learn in the finale that this was categorically untrue.
Brainiac's getting a lot of Boss Baby vibes from Krypton since it's the only movie he's ever seen. It's like the war AI is getting a lot of Conquer vibes off of Krypton.
Mm-hmm. Your mouth is moving, Jor-El, and yet all I am hearing is kill all the inferior life forms. It's the strangest thing.
Man, that makes me think of a joke that is in Dragon Ball Z.
I was going to say.
On that note.
It's the darndest thing, my audio processor must be malfunctioning because all I'm hearing is kill me, kill me, kill me.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up considering the fact that we've got a Supergirl in this season who's definitely cosplaying Android 18.
Yes. Just
okay,
so
I wasn't the only
overt.
person.
Did the animators make that explicit that this was like an Android 18 homage?
Did they need to? It's the exact same outfit.
Yeah. Because I've seen so much of I'm an animator on My Adventures with Superman, and here's an animation test for a post-credit scene that we never got to use, so here, put it on Twitter. So I feel like we've heard a lot of communication from the team, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was something that some artist threw out, oh, by the way, this was inspired by this.
I'm just going to say a show that makes overt Full Metal Alchemist or on Host Club and Gurren Lagann references is not going to be shocked and unaware of Dragon Ball Z.
Right. Especially when Kara and Clark fight in this season, we get beam clashes.
We get beam clashes. Yeah. The coolest frost breath I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
We'll get to it.
We get the rush past each other and then hit you down really hard kind of moves from Dragon Ball Z. We're certainly seeing them fight very much like a Saiyan.
Let's take this fight out into this wasteland.
Right. So what was everyone's thoughts on Kara?
I loved her.
So good. So good.
So good.
I like so many things about her on like the individual character level and on the meta level. I've mentioned a couple times, the thing I was dreading this season was because they were setting up Waller doesn't trust Superman and Lex Luthor doesn't trust Superman. Then Brainiac is like, I am going to steal your body and do crimes in it. And I was like, God damn it. If they give me another brainwashed Superman ruins all his goodwill thing, when we just dealt with that in season 1, I'm going to be so frustrated. But then I was like, hey, they already have a brainwashed Kryptonian. Like, we don't need another one. And I was right. I was so glad I was right, because Kara serving that narrative role meant that she and Clark got to be, A, very different characters, which is already kind of difficult for two characters with functionally the same power set and very similar origins. Yeah. And B, it meant that Clark got to remain fundamentally incorruptible while they still got to do all of that good, sad, brainwashed Kryptonian angst, which is great. Best of both worlds for me, because I get to the two things I wanted most from this show.
You might even say the world's finest.
Yeah, you could say that if they, fingers crossed, bring in anime Bruce Wayne in season 3.
True.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. It's not going to break my heart if they don't, because I've already got the fan fictions lined up, but it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I loved the take on Kara in this one. Like, as a character, she's been like searching for an identity ever since she was initially introduced as a distaff counterpart for Superman. You know, like, first off, the original idea was beta tested as a construct created by a magic totem that Jimmy Olsen used.
Golden Age comics. How I love thee.
But then with Kara, when she was introduced, you know, it's functionally identical, like you said, superpowers and origin. Like, Argo City is not that different from Krypton by itself, and really was only introduced to explain, like, why she was just arriving and was, like, in this younger kind of position.
There was an interesting disparity between coming to this place as an infant versus having, like, a living memory of growing up in this other culture and, like, growing up with your birth family versus being adopted as an infant. Like, there's an interesting disparity to be had there. And then this show is like, we're not going to do that. She's not going to remember her dad. It's completely fine. So they made a little bit of extra work for themselves, because that is a distinction that some of the comics have done, where it's like, Clark doesn't know any other world besides Earth. You know, he learned about Krypton, but he didn't remember it. Whereas Kara has good reason to be angry and frustrated and alienated, having her world ripped away from her when she was, like, awake and, like, old enough to understand. So I like that this show managed to retain the disparity of, like, Clark feels at home on Earth and Kara tremendously does not. And Clark is a fundamentally, like, calm person, whereas Kara is really not.
Yeah, very much represented with their energy fields. Like, she's got a red energy field, he's got a blue energy field. So we get the red Oni, blue Oni kind of thing going on there.
We are 2 full seasons into the show, and they still haven't explained why Clark can glow blue and get stronger sometimes.
I thought when he confronted Brainiac, we were going to get that explanation. Because Brainiac was like, why? Why won't you tell me how you do this? And he's like, I don't know.
Brainiac was like, all right, well, I also got nothing, so let's just move on.
What I think I liked about the construction of Kara's character in this season as a foil to Clark is that Clark has had in this season and the last some angst about, like, oh, what if I'm just a weapon and I'm not actually a real person? And then you have someone like Kara who is functionally just a weapon for Brainiac and yet is still a person underneath that. So even if Clark's worst fears were true, they are still intrinsically disproven by Kara, which I found very, very cool and how she was used in the season.
It's a really lovely way to kind of demonstrate, like, a character might find it easier to show a different character kindness they can't automatically show themselves. And with Clark, it's like he can recognize Kara's worth and humanity, or personhood, you know, validity, even if when he looks at himself, he's like, what if I am just a gun? I like how we've just looped back around from, like, Iron Giant heavily derived from Superman to, like, Superman is now heavily derived from Iron Giant. Like, yes, they're in conversation with each other.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Why don't we give some surface thoughts about Brainiac before we get into the overall, like, plot of the season?
It was an interesting design for Brainiac.
Oh, yeah.
Like we usually see him as like the animated series version where he's got like the silver top and the purple bottom, but we've never really seen him as like, I don't know how to describe him. I almost called him like a Lego figure in the beginning when I saw him.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, it's a cool concept, but they haven't really done it before. And I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, the Kryptonian tech has this sort of like floating kind of design to it, just in general. And so it goes for like the robots are all just like sort of connected pieces.
They make them very angular, sort of, polyhedral, bunch of triangles. I think this is the most robotic Brainiac has ever been, because normally he's kind of biomechanical, because of course that's how you get Brainiac 5 down the line. Yeah.
The non-human face really adds a lot to the design.
Yeah. And they still managed to give him the anime character goes insane fisheye thing in that one scene. That was really fun. I think that this version of Brainiac was really cool. I've seen a lot of people comparing him to I Am from Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. It's just like robot learns to hate because it was designed for war, which I think is an interesting comparison. Character-wise, he's awful and I love it. He's just
a bastard.
He's so bad. And I love how they did that thing where they were like, he's evil. He's also the dad of this character. These two things can coexist. And guess what? They make him worse. Like, because there's that bit where he's like, even now as I'm kicking the ever-loving shit out of Supergirl, I still look down at her and see the baby in the cradle reaching out towards me, which makes me feel kind of bad that I'm going to continue absolutely pummeling her. And it's like, ooh, that made him worse. That's like the opposite. Yeah, it's the opposite of
being able to feel love makes me realize I can also feel hate.
Yeah.
Hate for you and for all.
It's like he can feel love enough to make the fact that he's choosing to be evil feel worse and more callous. Not like, oh, there's depth in there. It's like the fact that you still can see her as a child you chose to raise, and then you did this to her. It just makes him so much worse.
I think it added a lot that not only was Brainiac overtly like mind controlling Kara at several points, but he was also just casually emotionally manipulating her and all of the downtime from that. So there's two layers to it.
Yeah, there's so much trauma that she's digging through.
Yeah.
It's not just brainwashing, or rather there's direct brainwashing where it's like, here's command words and code words and that will like activate things for you. But then there's model citizens of the empire, like lines. Like there's so much dogma she's been fed, and all these like faked memories or like modified memories.
Yeah, it's like just straight up like technological gaslighting at that point. And I think there's in the episode where he's confronting Clark in his own memories, there's a part where he goes from like evil brainwashing supervillain to like, oh, that's so cruel. And it's when he starts making Clark doubt his memories of his loved ones. Like,
dude, she broke up with you like that? Oh, dude, that sucks.
Yeah. But like then
it's like fake memory, real memory.
And it's just like that took it over the edge. Because like the thing is, there's this kind of like gradient of how bad is it when a villain is brainwashing a character. Because like when Brainiac possesses Clark is tucked up in a nice little Black Mercy the whole time. Doesn't really know what's going on. He's doing his own thing. So it's just Brainiac puppeting him around. Whereas with Kara, you have this much nastier, more visceral, like make her doubt her memories, erase her memories, puppet her to do these horrible things, but deny her those memories. Like Brainiac even complains, like when you were a child, it was so easy to control you, but then you started getting opinions and stuff, and it got really inconvenient for me. Like, oh boy. And then he's got like the Eradicator override thing. I can't remember exactly what he called it. I don't think it's the Eradicator. That's a different buzzword.
No, he says it is like Eradicator override or something. When he wipes her, or when he like puts her in like berserker mode at the very end.
Exactly. That I couldn't remember what he called it.
They're setting up a lot of the Superman,
the death of Superman,
the reign of the Superman, stuff in the season. Like Hank Henshaw also pops up in the season, and I have to say that this Brainiac resembles the Eradicator as well, and the two of them have similarities, especially when you do like the Brainiac from Krypton kind of version of the character, particularly like this one where it's like, here's the war thing. It's all about preserving Kryptonian culture and the Empire. Yeah. Like that's very much the original Eradicator in the comics. So it was interesting for him to drop that reference because it's an area where the characters have overlap.
Yeah, I thought that they were doing some very interesting stuff with that. Although they also do just frequently name drop things that only loosely resemble their original version, which is fine. That doesn't bother me. This is clearly a different take on that. But I think that they sort of covered the full spectrum of like how a bad guy can control a good guy in this show. And like you get the clean version where it's like he's possessing Clark. Clark's not in control. Clark's not in the driver's seat. As soon as Clark wakes up, Brainiac is out of there. And then it's like, oh, thank goodness. Okay, now, Kara, let's deal with your years and years of brainwashing, programming, and the actual override that takes away your free will. And that was the part I was afraid they were going to do to Clark, because that's what they did in the finale of Superman the Animated Series. Darkseid did that to him, and it was so annoying because then he was dealing with it through all of Justice League. That version of Superman, I could see that happening too. This version of Superman, I think, would break some fundamental things about the way he's perceived and the way he's written, and I was glad they didn't do it. But that's really what made Brainiac interesting in this series, I think, is that that's the kind of thing he would do and knew how to do. Because most Brainiacs aren't that subtle. Like, let's be real. They're usually pretty basic when it comes to the evil scheming.
Yeah, usually they don't get people.
Well, if they get people, it's usually Lex. And that's like no real loss because.
Well, let me rephrase that. They don't usually understand people's motivations and whatnot. They don't understand how people think.
Yeah, and I think the fact that this Brainiac understood Kara enough to just absolutely psychologically devastate her made him a really interesting bad guy. Like, went beyond like, oh no, I hope they stop him because he has evil plans, to like, oh, he is awful. I really hope they get rid of that guy like now. Yeah. Like, he's not just evil, he's also a jerk, and that's worse.
You see, Kal-El, I am the ultimate AI, capable of all kinds of human emotional destruction because I am connected to the internet and have spent time on 4chan. The one thing I do really like about his design, in comparison to the other Kryptonian tech that we've seen in Season 1 and Season 2, is where those mechs are mostly just headless, where the heads are kind of built into so these big shoulders and a little tiny head in there. Yeah, this Brainiac has its own, like, very large, horned mechanical head. But also the purple cloak over him, I think, is a really cool design. Not only does it evoke the very, like, Roman-coded Krypton they're going for, this is, like, Viltrum and very much Rome. But the idea that this robot would choose to garb himself in something, I think is very interesting, because it's this AI that has very bold ideas for itself compared to what a war computer would normally get up to. It's a nice, subtle way to kind of indicate some of his kind of, like, character flavor, but also to convey a little bit of how much of a bastard he is.
I mean, the episode title, The Machine Who Would Be Empire. Yeah. It's not Emperor, Empire. And I like that. The idea of this wartime AI created with this concept of what the culture it's fighting for is supposed to be, and therefore not trying to, like, rule it exactly, but just trying to build it. And then as soon as they're like, we're taking this thing in a different direction, he's like, you can't fire me, I quit. And it just goes real bad. Although, side note, we all agree that Krypton's just in the Phantom Zone, right? Like, that phrasing was suspiciously specific. Like,
so listeners who are not familiar with the Patreon exclusive,
the Patreon exclusive after show, affectionately referred to as the ass.
Yes.
Yeah, we had two separate ones about My Adventures with Superman season 2. Yeah. There's some highly specific phrasing and visuals that Brainiac uses when he is describing what he did to Krypton, because the twist is like, yes, he's the one who destroyed Krypton. Whoa, no way. Which means, okay, it wasn't a natural disaster. It wasn't the star exploding. Oh, well, sorry. I didn't realize those were off the table.
Spoilers. Oh, my God.
Allow me to reevaluate everything I've said. It's like, I ripped it from the heavens and cast it into hell. And it's like, like a hell-like zone, you could say, where, okay. And then, like, it's the Kirby dot visual effect, like the whiteout. It doesn't look like a planet exploding. It looks like some sci-fi bullshit happening. Yeah. Here's the other reason why I think Krypton is just in the Phantom Zone. Because they've given us 2 options to get AI Jor-El into the story, and they keep getting rid of them. Because in season 1, he gets kryptonited and stops working. And then at the beginning of season 2, he's back, but then he gets kryptonited and stops working, and he's gone for good. And he's like, yes, goodbye, my son. I will be gone forever now. And I was like, well, you can't do that. You need AI Jor-El around to tell Clark about stuff, because otherwise he can't figure any of this stuff out.
Yeah, or at least AI Lara.
Yeah, or AI Lara, just something. But they keep destroying it, and they keep destroying his home ship. And I was like, okay, they're out of options. If they want Jor-El, and that is too cool of a design for Jor-El to leave.
It's pretty cool. The eye patch,
it's the coolest he's ever looked. This is Odin Jor-El, and it's amazing. Yeah. So their only option is to bring back OG Jor-El. And, like, this show has not mentioned the Phantom Zone at all. So it would be a huge surprise for characters in story. But come on. They've done too much planting. They dropped Kandor, and then there were no Kryptonians in it. They said, oh, this is Kandor.
There was one.
There was Kara, but we knew she was there. So, like, they've scrapped all the possible opportunities for Clark to have a tiny bit of this home he never knew. So the only option is for the home to still be out there. Like, that's the only remaining writing option they have. Otherwise, they've just essentially introduced all this Kryptonian stuff and then scrapped it because they can't do anything else with it. So, like, they can leave it dead. That would be very pathosy and stuff like that. But it would not surprise me in the least if not necessarily we get the whole planet back, but, like, somebody comes out of the Phantom Zone in season 3.
Yeah.
This does feel like the kind of anime bullshit that the show is a fan of.
Oh,
like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally
it wouldn't
see
surprise me
happening.
in the least.
I mean, that's the thing about the show, which is you take Superman lore and then just chock full of anime bullshit. Just like pack it in there.
It works. The two great tastes, they taste great together.
That's our main thoughts on the two big new characters, Kara and Brainiac. Is there anything else we want to talk about before we jump in?
I don't think so, because stuff like the Jimmy, like, rich plot,
Poor
I feel
guy.
like we'll just sort of address as it sort of like comes up, because it's kind of just there for like gag purposes in the season.
I think there's one thing we can bring it up when we get there, but it's just the fact that, like, we knew from the advertisement that Kara was going to be in this season, and we knew from the season 1 finale that there was one Kryptonian still knocking around, and yet it still felt like a plot twist that the armored Kryptonian who was heavily Zod coded in the season 1 finale.
Neil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did want to bring up how we all said Zod last time.
Yeah.
We were all wrong.
Well, but that's what's interesting, because, like, as I think I was watching the end of episode 3 when I started putting the pieces together, because I was like, wait, hold on. Let's assume Jor-El's telling the truth. He has no reason to lie. If there's only 2 Kryptonians in existence, that other one has to be Kara. And then, of course, at the end of episode 4, we see the armored Kryptonian floating over Earth as soon as Clark fires off the signal. And I was like, that confirms it. That tears it. We know that that's Kara. Nobody I saw online was reacting to that. Like,
Really?
I didn't see a single person put it together at that point. It was really, I was like, they just showed it. We learned the truth a week early. And all I saw people talking about was like, man, it's really sad how Lois and Clark had the same breakup plot structure that they did in Shrek. And I was like, okay, guys, I know we're all suffering, but can we please focus? This is huge. It still felt a little bit twisty because, of course, the next episode, Kara's just wandering around. She's all mild-mannered. She's all chill. She's so cute, and she and Jimmy are going on a date. But then it's like, hey, bad news. They're making this too cute, which means something's going to go catastrophically wrong. It was so good because I was like stewing in the implications for the whole week. I was looking it up because, like, the voice credit for the armored Kryptonian in season 1, she's got a voice modulator, but if I recall correctly, she was voiced by Kari Wahlgren in that episode. So, like, the figure was always a girl using a voice deepening modulator. And I was like, there's only other one girl Kryptonian. It's got to be Kara. Like, just from the credits, we could have guessed, but nobody put it together. So I don't know. I felt like I was losing my mind. And then, of course,
blind.
We were so blind.
It's the classic kind of bait and switch, or misdirect, really, where they are making you look at the wrong hand in the situation.
Yeah.
Well, what Kryptonian is going to be out there? You know, which one makes you kneel? Which one looks scary in armor that we're used to looking at?
Yeah, they've got like the House of L logo, but bad. Okay. That's like kind of Zod-ish, right? And it was so brilliant because it was very simple. They weren't trying to mislead anybody. They weren't like, oh, what's that over there? That's Zod. Just kidding. They let us draw the incorrect conclusions because we're all nerds who know too much about Superman lore.
Right.
But yeah, I just wanted to drop that in because, like, we're going to get there when we go through linearly. But I thought, like, we were just taking Kara's presence for granted and like, oh, Brainiac, brainwashing, stuff like that. But, like, it is important to note. That was a big twist. Like, we didn't know that for the first half of the season. We just knew from the poster she was going to be there.
I do have one question for, like, later on, though. So Brainiac mentioned that Krypton was in peace talks with another empire. I saw a lot of debate about this online.
Which empire was it?
I saw someone, and the one that made my eyebrows go up was like Apocalypse.
Yeah.
That planet in that shot straight up looks like Apocalypse.
And I was like, there's no way they're bringing it this early.
Well, and there is a parademon in that, like, hologram of the different
champions.
They're also Thanagarian.
I was so excited.
Made my heart hurt.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I was just like, oh my gosh, they have a Green Lantern. Yay!
Oh, yeah, that one too.
Yeah. But yeah.
Rest in peace for Green Lanterns everywhere.
The thing is, I saw people be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Brainiac must have destroyed Apocalypse in the backstory. And I was like, I don't think that happened. I think probably Brainiac just went on to destroy a bunch of other stuff. All he needed to do was get one parademon to turn it into that training program hologram thing. Like, this Brainiac is pretty tough. come on, he's not beating Darkseid tough.
No.
Exactly. Apocalypse made the most sense to me. It could also be like the Daxamites or something, where it's just like, a similar kind of like super species that's out there in the like in the world. Or they could make it like the Martians and like decouple like the Martians from being literally from Mars as far as a species goes. But like that would be like the appropriate power level for like an alternate empire for them to be up against.
But Case, we all know that Martian Manhunter was on Earth the entire time. He was watching from the shadows and was waiting to help.
He's actually Sam Lane.
That's just lore, okay?
Yeah, because he got teleported by that malfunctioning computer. I've been reading a lot of old comics, and they're so weird. It's great.
Maybe this is another classic My Adventures with Superman misdirect, and it's actually just a completely normal, regular planet that has no prior comic connection at all.
Well, I will say, if they're doing that thing where Kryptonians had superpowers on their home world, which I will say, a little confusing to combo that with, also, we're powered by the sun. I was like, did Krypton have a yellow sun in this version then? That would make sense for that. Because as soon as they started being like red sun protocol, it's like, okay, so red suns are bad for Kryptonians. So Krypton didn't have
a red. Was weird.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like internally inconsistent. It's just different from what I was expecting it to be. But if everyone on the planet had those levels of superpowers, I could see them being a serious threat to Apocalypse. I could see that being an actual war. Because normally they're like, Superman is the only person who can even sort of go toe-to-toe with Darkseid. And it's like, if you got a whole planet of them, even if Superman is stronger than most, that was another thing that Brainiac just dropped casually as like a one line of exposition before they killed him and he could stop providing exposition. Was like, Kryptonians aren't born, they're made, and every generation is engineered to be stronger.
Yes.
I was like, helpful of you to say that. Weird you didn't say that earlier. So is it implied that like the reason why these two are glowy and badass is because they push the little make baby better button and then
I don't know if we want to go down, are these the peaks of eugenics here? Why don't we get into the actual episode conversations? This season feels very arc heavy. The individual episodes I think will be more just like where along in the story we are. So why don't we start with season 2, episode 1, More Things in Heaven and Earth, the Valentine's Day episode.
Yeah. You guys ever have that thing where you're like, a romantic subplot has resolved, they've had their big kiss, and then immediately things start getting too good, and you're like, uh-oh, you're winding up for the breakup, like already. That's exactly what I started feeling with the beginning of this season and when they started dropping the episode titles. In the first episode.
The very first sequence is like, you need to plan the perfect Valentine's Day date with Lois or you're a bad boyfriend. And of course, like within the scope of the episode, eventually they get to like, oh, Clark, it doesn't need to be a perfect date. It's just you and me together. And that's all we need. Is like, great, cool. But like from that very first, like, Clark needs to plan the perfect date, my brain was like, they're gonna mess this up for us. They wouldn't set this up if they didn't want to just ruin everything and rip it all apart.
The funny thing about season 2 is that it is very much a mirror pacing-wise of season 1 down to which episodes have which major sort of events happen. And this is very much the mirror to, I am going to be a normal man having a normal day and I won't do anything wrong. Okay, I had to save the cat, but from this point forward, normal day. And it's like, I am going to be the perfect boyfriend planning the perfect date and nothing will go wrong. And if you don't set something like that up unless everything is going to go wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get to more of the pacing parallels later in the season.
Although one thing I do want to bring up, which is the amazing setup and payoff that this episode like sets up the soup on the roof as like Clark's idea for a great date, and then we get the brick joke at the very end of the season where it's just like soup on the roof. Clearly he would have won in that scenario if he had just gone with that.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I think that one of the things that they keep confirming about this version of Clark is that he's got really good instincts, but everything around him is telling him to be something other than what he is. And every time he listens to them, it all goes wrong. Because it's just like, come on, Clark, you're perfect just the way you are. You just need to learn that. You just need to believe in yourself.
Yeah, he's our special boy. He gets soup for both him and Lois. Spicy for Lois, mild for him.
They made him truly the whitest boy, and it is hilarious.
You'd think that with like invulnerability and eventually frost breath, he'd have a better spice tolerance, but no. He may be Kryptonian, but he's still white as fuck.
Yeah. Or alternatively, he like eats it and it just gets solar energy supercharged immediately. Like, what's happening?
laser eyes just start discharging like crazy.
It's the nightmare scenario from that one episode of Justice League with Dr. Destiny. The one where they all have nightmares and Clark's heat vision explodes Lois Lane. We all remember.
Yep. So this episode also wraps up the lingering Krypton plotline from the first season. Well, we get to see the remnant of the ship. We sort of established the Fortress of Solitude, which, again, anime as fuck in terms of design.
Oh, yeah. Floating crystal towers. We love to see it.
Yeah, with a floating bridge that connects it.
And then they never go inside for the entire season.
I know, it's such a bummer. Like, what is the point? Yes, exactly. You're like, shouldn't this matter to the season that involves Kryptonian stuff so much? And yet it doesn't. So I guess it's
maybe it'll happen next season.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
The Fortress of Solitude is so unused, I forgot what it looked like.
Yeah, I remember we were having that conversation after the finale. It's like, man, that was so good. And I was like, it's crazy that they never went back to the fortress. And you were like, what? What fortress? The plot of episode 1.
Yeah, but we also get Austin Jor-El, though. There's like the best part. Like he drops like the reveal, like, hey, I was trying to talk to you all those years ago, but you got so scared and buried me in the ground. So, thanks for that.
Just expert dad guilt already. Top tier stuff.
Yeah. I would say, by the way, we talked about how most of our Kryptonian perception in this is from Brainiac or filtered through Kara. And I would say that this is the one episode where we do get some vibes of what Krypton was like through Jor-El. And specifically, like, we see him flying, but it's not just the hologram. He indicates that, like, your weak mate who doesn't have our powers. We do establish that it does seem that the Kryptonians are used to having this baseline level of power.
Yeah. I think another reason why I'm extra suspicious of the way Brainiac framed Krypton is all of season 1, they were establishing that Clark is incorrect to be terrified of who he is. So if they took that and then they were like, but he is correct to be terrified of Krypton, is a little bit contradictory, especially with how dedicated season 1 was to making it very clear, like, this is an immigrant story. This is about being separated from your heritage through tragedy and war and stuff like that. This is very much about that. So if they did that and then they were like, but Krypton was a bunch of warmongering genocidal maniacs, so maybe it's good that they exploded. Like, it's not great. And there's like layered reasons for why it's extra not great if you take into account like Superman's origins created by 2, Jewish American men. And a lot of the original version of Krypton is very much like, very scientifically minded. We're all very much about like learning and education. And Moses in the bulrushes had to send him away for his safety. Like it's a very Jewish narrative. Yeah. And then if you make it like, so Krypton is a bunch of genocidal maniacs, it's like, guys, I don't think you should have changed that from point A to point B. I mean, I know I'm biased, but come on, can't we have like one character? This is just a thing that the comics have been doing for years and years. Like, Krypton's utopia status has been steadily declining until it's like Krypton was actually horrible and evil, and it exploding was maybe good, actually, so that the one good guy could come to Earth and then be good and all-American, which is the thing they've been sort of moving away from in recent, like, Superman stories. Where it's like,
yeah, that was very much an 80s
and
standpoint, like the John Byrne era for Krypton being very cold and a place that is not good to go to.
Most of the people who were writing Superman later weren't writing from the same standpoint as the people who created him in the first place. That's just how it goes. But I'm kind of inclined to believe from the way they wrote this season that the version of Krypton that Brainiac was portraying was very much separate from the way it actually functioned. And Jor-El's perspective on it and Jor-El representing it was kind of meant to be like, look, there's a lot to be scared of, but we're not the enemy. You don't need to be terrified of us. You don't need to bury us and pretend we don't exist. You can learn about us, which is why I was so bummed out when they were like, and now my hologram is gone forever. I was like, wait, no, come back. You were just making good points.
I leave you to the mercy of biased storytellers.
And that's the thing. I think that they did a lot of work to set up throughout the season. Like, the main theme is Clark feeling profoundly isolated. He is desperate for somebody to tell him more about himself and his culture, and he thinks he can have that in Kara, but then it turns out Kara's been gotten to by Brainiac, and neither of them know the truth, which is, again, more points for the, Krypton is absolutely intact in the Phantom Zone, because otherwise there is no way for them to get answers to these questions. Like, they wouldn't set this up and then not pay it off. They've been too good about that in the past. I've had an axe to grind about Krypton getting progressively worse and worse as more writers miss the point of its original conception. So the fact that this show wasn't leaning into that and was making it pretty clear, like, Brainiac has his own agenda and it is very much not true to life.
In a sense, it's nice to see that civilizations are complicated and there are good and bad things about them. Anyway, that's that.
Yeah. No, I was going to say that there's somewhere in the middle is I think what the actual truth is. You know, like Jor-El alludes to, like, there was an empire we couldn't beat, and then it looks like really the empire that they couldn't beat was themselves. You know, like that it really was the Kryptonians. You know, whatever the peace talks, the ceasefire that they're talking about, the language of that is like very apt for this exact moment.
Yeah.
But the language of it is reflective of like that there was some kind of conflict going on, but ultimately the thing that destroyed them was their own jingoism. The expression of that in the form of Brainiac, who is, you know, a bit Skynet coded, if you will, you know, just writ large.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we don't really have a solid answer. We have Jor-El's perspective, and I'm glad that they let him finally speak in a way that Clark could understand him, because throughout all of season 1, it was kind of frustrating seeing Clark being understandably terrified, but it's like, Clark, please, for the love of God, be a little more curious about your past. You're driving me up the wall, my friend. But that's the thing, he's profoundly frightened of it, because he spent the whole first season being like, I just want to be normal, I want to belong, and I don't want to acknowledge that. If I bury the past deep enough, maybe it'll never come back. And then he's like, okay, I accept that I'm Superman. I can accept that I'm good. But Krypton itself is still scary and evil and bad. And by the end of season 2, I think he's gotten to the point where it's like, well, maybe we can learn. Maybe we can find some answers to these questions.
I mean, this episode very much like alludes to like, oh, the Krypton wasn't all bad and that you're not alone, and like sets up like him having that question for the remainder of the season. And, you know, we get to see him fight a couple more Task Force X goons. We get to see a little bit of the updates in terms of Amanda Waller's layout of just like who she's able to send out against Superman.
Pitting Deathstroke against Superman is still so ambitious. Like, like, come on. Yep. This guy doesn't even usually fight Batman. He fights Batman's kid and his friends.
Right. Deathstroke weighs 12 pounds soaking wet, and he thinks he has a chance in hell against the last son of Krypton.
Deathstroke, DC's most divorced man.
Yeah, so at the end of this all, I was kind of confused. Like, did the Fortress of Solitude kind of put itself in a different spot than where Task Force X found it in the first place? Because otherwise, it's not really a Fortress of Solitude if they can find it again.
Maybe they just can't tell because all of Antarctica kind of looks the same. She's like, well, where was it? There was snow. Okay, thanks. That's very helpful, Wade.
I mean, there was like teleportation effects going on, so I could totally believe that it's now in a new spot. However, it is stabilized into a fortress instead of a fallen spaceship.
Maybe that's why they didn't go back. Just couldn't find the dang thing.
That's also entirely a possibility.
Season 3, episode 1 is just Clark flying around like, where the fuck is it?
He's just doing a methodical sweep, square mile by square mile. Pretty sure it's not in this one.
Where did I leave my fortress? Jeez. Row.
He gets there and then he can't find his keys. He's just like, hold on.
But the key's so big. Where? I feel like that's all I really need to go into on this one. I mean, this is the episode that like reminds us that Jimmy is rich, and so it's like cute with how he how he spends so much money. And when I say cute, how he spends so much money, man, stuff is expensive in Metropolis. Apparently,
those cards, those novelty cards, cost $300,000. I paused it to check.
I am certain that what's going on is that Jimmy is so not used to having money that he's just getting fleeced mercilessly by everybody here. But he like Googles like he clicks the first sponsored ad result and just pays out of pocket whatever they say.
Yeah, but it's a remarkable amount of money in some scenarios that, it's fine because like the whole joke of it is ultimately he gives it all away by the time the season's over. But like every time he mentioned that he did something and a sixth figure dropped, I was like, what? What?
What? I love the counter as a recurring gag in between episodes. That's so funny.
It was amazing. And it was a really good, like, Chekhov's gun, because it's funny, it's funny. And then in its last appearance, it's sincere. Yeah. It's like, yes, genius.
Yeah, I do appreciate they could have made Jimmy a lot more obnoxious with his wealth, and they mercifully did not. So I'm glad for that characterization choice.
Yeah, Jimmy is always very restrained from being like, he could be annoying given his personality, but like they thread the needle really well.
It would have been very easy for them to be like, Jimmy's gotten too big for his britches and needs to be taught a lesson. And I'm very glad they didn't do that. It's low-hanging fruit and it's always annoying because they only ever make those episodes by making the character like twice as obnoxious as they've ever gotten outside of that context. And then by the end, they're like, yeah, guys, I'm sorry I went a little power mad by having money. the true wealth is friendship. And it's like, I like that Jimmy just has $1 million and is just like, I'm going to make this nobody's problem.
Right.
Just going to use this to buy a lot of ice cream.
And we also get the little side tangent where Jimmy is the one to give Lex the pep talk.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, you know, you're on your feet now, but you can just keep at it, keep going. You know, it'll work out one day. And Lex is like, yeah.
Yeah.
He turns that around in episode 4 at the conference, right?
I was expecting that planting to take longer to pay off, to be completely honest. I figured that would be the last we saw of Alex, and then, surprise, he's central to the plot for the rest of the show.
Yep.
I read that the way they came up with the character of Alex in season 1 is that the studio gave them a mandate of, you cannot use Lex Luthor in this season. And they're like, okay, well, Ivo has this assistant named Alex. And then the studio bosses are like, is that Lex Luthor? They're like, he has hair. No, shut up. Why would you say that? And then they bring him back in season 2, and of course he's Lex Luthor. But it's like, is that Lex Luthor? Yeah, that's up to you, Mr. Boss.
It was him the entire
Do you
time.
like him?
Perry, the Lex Luthor. I just hope that he keeps showing up with completely different hairstyles, hair colors, heavily implied to be wigs. His hair is just backwards in one shot.
Moving on to Adventures with My Girlfriend, the second episode. So in the previous episode, Lois found out that her dad was being held by Task Force X. And so she asked Clark to help her investigate Stryker Penitentiary. Meanwhile, Jimmy is given a team to run for Flamebird.
The News Kid Legion. Finally.
I did find this episode interesting because the whole conceit for Jimmy is that he has to deliver content on a deadline in video form. And I was watching this, like, Red, do you feel like you have a different perspective on this from the average viewer? So it's like the way that they talk about this, I'm like, oh, this almost hits too close to home in some regards of like, I have to like post a video by 5 p.m., but I don't have any ideas. It's like, that's not exactly what it's like in real life, but
well,
they touch on the sensation of it a little bit.
Yeah, when they're like, the Daily Planet.
It's got big like vlog channel energy where it's like, if you didn't do anything interesting today, God help you, you still got to put out a video somehow.
Yes.
But yeah, I thought this was a really interesting episode. But again, my spidey sense was going off for like, oh, they're going to make this annoying, aren't they? Because Sam Lane is so, it's not his fault. As a character, he's very interesting. He's very stoic. He very much thinks he's doing the right thing. He's like a classic way you can do like a paladin archetype as an antagonist. He's 100% sure he's doing the right thing, and that's very dangerous. Narratively, he is a vortex of frustration purely because of what he does to Lois. And I think this is very interesting. I think this is intentional writing. This is a case where it's like, it annoys me. It's supposed to annoy me. So it's working. Good job. But Sam brings out some of Lois's most frustrating qualities. And again, this is very intentional because she has this huge bundle of abandonment issues and like self-worth issues tied up in her dad, and then just extrapolated into everything else. And this was the episode where I was like, okay, this is going to become a problem because Lois doesn't have a plan beyond, I must get my dad back because it is unacceptable for him to leave me behind, to be separate from me. We have to save him and then we have to keep him. And I was like, okay, this is going to be an enormous problem, but it's not going to matter because Lois is too, hung up on this. And again, it's good characterization, but it was going to frustrate the plot a lot. And I could like see it on the horizon. I was like, we're going to have to get through some annoying episodes before we get back to like the characters talking to each other like human beings. And unfortunately, I was right. But again, the writing was doing that on purpose. My annoyance was a feature and not a bug. I could just see what they were going for. I was like, all right, I'm going to need to brace myself for the next couple episodes or I'm not going to be ready.
And like Clark tries. There's a point where Lois says like, you need to like put aside your feelings. And he's like, I did. We're here because I set aside my feelings. And the thing that I'm feeling right now isn't actually related to the fact that he kidnapped me and tortured me. Like, it's the fact that
we forget.
Right, it's the fact that he makes you feel so small and bad. And I can't forgive that part. Again, Clark just being the bestest boy.
Just such a sweet boy.
Yeah.
They really kind of glossed over Amanda Waller has been illegally experimenting on inmates and giving them alien superpowers. I kind of thought that was going to go somewhere faster, but I mean, now we've got like a million little Chekhov's guns out in the general population, so who knows?
Right. On that note, we do have this is the episode that opens with Amanda Waller like prepping like Sam's like coffee order. which is a fun sequence in there and sort of becomes a thing about her that she knows everything about her subordinates so that she can break them. Especially
Amanda Waller's daily affirmation routine.
Oh my God.
You control this day.
I want to see Brainiac's daily affirmations.
You are very triangular.
You are majestic. You are empire.
You are Krypton.
You make everything else seem small.
Atomic Skull is in this episode, right?
Yeah.
That was like one of the earlier, because they've kind of been making all of the standard Superman villains out of stolen Kryptonian tech, which I think is not a bad way to do it. I think it makes the universe feel just a little bit small at this current juncture. It's like all of the source of weird stuff on Earth is coming from Krypton. It's like, that's fine. That's whatever. Everything has a very consistent design aesthetic.
It does explain why everything's happening now.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. It's kind of like how in Smallville, they're like, everyone's getting powers from the meteor rocks that give Clark an allergic reaction. It's like, okay, sure. Everything is kryptonite. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I was thinking about that specifically because of Atomic Skull, where it's just like, okay, like here's the writing perspective on it, which is that they're going to create a character that is energy powers because of Kryptonian tech, full stop. Like that's just going to happen because that's what the plot demands and that's what they're doing with the Kryptonian tech in this world. Making it Atomic Skull is just for the fans of the property to be like, here's a shout out for a character that we're just not going to have a way of fitting in otherwise. Like the only way we're going to get these characters in here in some cases is by making them illusions because they're not going to be central figures, but we need to have someone doing roughly that kind of thing. So, hey, isn't it nice that we get to use a character existing from this larger, property that we're drawing inspiration from?
Yeah. I don't hate that.
And so I'm okay with that. And they've allowed some of those characters to grow, specifically Livewire has grown in interesting ways.
There's so many interesting things with Livewire this season.
We'll get there. But so setting up that the character exists and then they can do something more interesting with them when they have either the time or the idea, I'm okay with, sure, it's annoying when it's just like, like you brought up Smallville with like the kryptonite being like, oh, it's the monster of the week situation. But like, there is a through line for them creating these monsters in this setting that makes a lot of sense, and it is by way of the Kryptonian tech. So, like, yeah, we're just going to have new characters who do the exact same thing and aren't important enough to dwell on anyway. It's not like a scenario where, like, oh, we're losing out on, like, so many cool new villains being introduced as a result of this all. No, they would be one-off, like, mooks. Isn't it more interesting that we get those ones? Obviously, like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had so much breathing room that we could spend time with all these characters? But that's not the show that we're doing here. The show is very much about, like, Superman's impact on the world and, like, the Kryptonian tech's impact on our technology and how that's all kind of going from there.
And also, this is very much doing kind of like a year one angle where it's like this is very, very young Superman. It is okay if a lot of his staple villains are just getting peppered into the world to presumably show up and cause more problems later. Like, I really like this show. I am not expecting it to run long enough to get to the main timeline of, like, Superman is an established figure. He's been around for years and years. His rogues we're winding up for Justice League. I doubt they're going to do that. It doesn't seem like the kind of thing this team is interested in doing. They very much like the sort of anime slice of life, small scale, fun little friend dramas, and then also Superman sometimes gets to punch a guy through a building. Like, great, amazing, love that. I don't think they're going to need to take this far enough to start being like, hey, remember when we threw Atomic Skull into season 2, episode 2? He's back now. Like, they don't need to do that. They can just pepper him in and be like, he's there. He's out there somewhere. Whatever.
And also, given the way that Warner Brothers has been acting as of late,
let's not jinx it. Let's not jinx it.
No, and that's the thing is, like, I think the team is smart enough to understand, like, look, why hold any of the cards for the sake of playing them later if we want to use it now? And it's like, no, but then we can't use it later. Like, no, like, if we want to use Atomic Skull now, let's just use Atomic Skull right now.
Yeah. Also, this show is really good at not killing off its villains immediately, which is a thing superhero movies haven't internalized. Like, the reason why you don't just kill the villain after they show up for the first time is so they can keep showing up. Yeah. That's why it keeps happening. Anyway, that's a whole different rant. This show's doing it good, so I don't need to rant about it. So we can move on.
The show is doing a great job of having, like, all these characters and having them be recurring. Like, the world is getting larger as we spend time here with this all. And it's not all Superman tech. As we get in the next episode, Full Metal Scientist.
I was so happy that they titled it that. It was amazing. And I was hoping it was going to be Steel, and I was right.
Yes. All right, so where to start on this one. One thing I really like is that Superman is really into John Henry Irons just as a figure in the community. I think that that's so cool. And we see this with other characters. I think that makes a later interaction less annoying because Superman is really interested in the people in his community who are doing good work.
Yes.
And I like that mutual admiration between Superman and John Henry Irons. I think that is fantastic. That is the vibe that we should have with those characters always.
Yeah, it's so sweet. And I love how it makes the sort of dynamic those two have more mutual, because a lot of the time Steele's admiration for Superman is very much kind of a one-way thing. Yeah. Because like Superman teams up with a lot of cool people, but Steele's very much like, I'm inspired by you. I've got your symbol. You know, when we do Death of Superman, I'll be one of the only people who's actually kind of taking up the mantle and doing a good job. Whereas in this one, Clark is like, oh my gosh, he's done like community work I could never do. All I can do is punch holes in big buildings. And it's just like, I like this. I like that this Clark is abundantly aware that other people can do good that he can't do. Because sometimes that's a blind spot for Superman. Like in the Justice League cartoon, that's a blind spot for Superman. He kind of implicitly believes that he can sort of do everything his team can do. And in his more frustrating episodes, he sort of forgets that they actually can do stuff he can't sometimes. So I like that this Superman is so profoundly respectful of like people who do good community work, who in their civilian identities can do the kind of good he can't. Also, he gets a new superpower. He can do that telekinetic, like, they're sort of doing that thing where it's like, he's super strong, but also he's got like a force field and he can extend it around stuff. And we're just going to make that explicit. And no further explanations needed, Your Honor.
What was it called, Case? It's called like the bio shield. I forgot what whatever.
Super aura says.
Yeah, you've got that open too.
I mean, it's the same thing that he manifests in All-Star Superman when he is close to the sun and like saves that space shuttle. But I would argue that like that's the kind of thing that Superman probably could do, and just they wouldn't represent it. You know, like it is very much exactly what Superboy Con-El Kent can do. With the telekinetic field. But like Superman has long had a force field that he can extend around things to like keep things intact when he picks up stuff that's too heavy and big that you would fall apart under its own weight. And you could argue that this is sort of an extension of that, where it's like, of course he's able to pull a person out of the fire and they're not hurt. He's Superman. Yeah. If it didn't have the blue glow and you just said that like anyone who Superman was protecting in his arms was protected, I'd be like, okay, cool, that makes enough sense.
I think that it's a nice little like going above and beyond the needs of explaining the plot, because most people watching the show aren't going to be like, oh, actually, if Superman tried to pick up that building by the corner would just break off. If Superman tried to pick up a plane, he would just punch through it. But I like that they kind of went the extra mile to be like, it's one of his powers now. Fight me.
Yeah. Please don't remind me of that episode of The Boys where he's like, I can't just pick up the plane, it'll break and stuff. I'm like, thank you, Homelander.
That's why you're not physics. Superman. Also, Silas Stone cameo.
Yeah.
They were just really pulling out all the stops. I was like, oh, Cyborg, and then Deathstroke is like, he's what, 9? And I was like, oh, no Cyborg for like 7 more years.
I was trying to remember which character they said, because there was also Natasha gets referenced in this one, Natasha Irons, and is like a flame bro, like is the reference in here, which leads me to think that she's like a young kid who's like into Jimmy Olsen's kind of stuff. And so like, the reference to Cyborg in there as well. It's nice to be like, no, this is early era for all these characters.
Yeah, the Teen Titans will happen, but you probably won't get to see it.
Not without a time jump, which can be fun, but
it could be fun, but
I don't want that in the show.
Yeah, I agree. Just more seasons of this, please. A lot of name drops in this episode, because that's when they start doing the line of Metallo robots, and it's like, that can only go amazingly.
Yeah, I'm dumb as hell, and even I knew that was bad news.
So I wanted to bring this one up because so it is interesting to me the way that Steel and Metallo have become linked together in Superman lore. It started with the animated series, where that was like the first time where they were like really on screen together, because Metallo has been sort of like an out there villain for Superman. In the 90s, around the time that Steel became a major thing, he wasn't a major villain for a stretch there. And then they had the event Underworld Unleashed, where all the supervillains sold their soul to the devil Neuron. All came back with like weird upgraded powers. And Metallo came back able to like fuse with any machine and take it over.
Oh, so Cyborg Superman, but before Cyborg Superman.
Post Cyborg Superman could do that.
That's even worse.
Really, really silly period in the comics there, where all these villains all of a sudden gained like weird powers by virtue of having sold their soul to the devil. And I mean, like most of DC did that, and so that's why you got like Killer Moth all of a sudden became like a literal killer moth.
Oh, I was wondering why that keeps happening in various DC properties. Yeah. He's always a joke villain until suddenly he isn't.
So like, there versions like that, or like Abracadabra all of a sudden gained actual magic in addition to his having science that looked like magic. The Joker just became more evil.
Oh, how could you tell?
I forget specifically. He traded his soul for something silly. Was like the joke in it all.
Well, that makes sense.
But anyway, yeah. So like, they weren't linked characters in the comics, but then the animated series is the first time where like the intro episode for Steel, Metallo was the villain, and it was just like, oh, it's a fun matchup to have like these two metal things. But then because Metallo is such an easy character to bring up early in Superman lore stuff, because robots are much easier to sell. I mean, sure, fifth dimensional imps are also pretty early in there, but when you get into like other weird, super science enemies, simple basic robot who happens to be powered by the thing that hurts Superman is a very easy sell and a very explainable one. And so things like the Grant Morrison New 52 Superman origin story, Metallo and Steel are very like intertwined in there. You just see them sort of like pop up as being like these two sides of the taking the Man of Steel part literally, and they easily match up with each other. And it also like sells like why Superman it's good for him to have allies because of the whole kryptonite thing.
I actually thought it was pretty impressive that they did this whole episode and they were clearly driving home like this Superman can really use allies, and they didn't have Metallo's powered by kryptonite in it to do it. They were just genuinely like, we have to delegate. Superman has to do this thing. Somebody else has to do this thing. You can't do both. And I thought that was impressive. That was the harder writing choice, and I'm glad they did it.
Yeah, I love that the power source for the Metallos, and this is basically the Spider-Man 2 plot of the power of the sun in the palm of my hands.
Oh my God,
In terms of like odd missed opportunities, I thought they were going to bring up how the sunlight was going to affect Clark. Because like, because then in the and I thought that they were, because like it looked like it was kind of hurting Clark, and I was like, that's a little unusual. Is he going to point out that it's a little unusual, or is he just going to stay focused? And it's like, it's fine that he stayed focused. They did enough like subtle planting, I guess, because we got both red sunlight being used to incapacitate him and yellow sunlight powering him up. We got both of those in this season after no references to them in the first season. So I kind of thought this would be the opportunity where they could sort of plant those concepts, and it just didn't come up so much. It was a little bit weird.
I think we got the red sun in the Cadmus episode in season 1.
Oh yeah, I think you're right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they had the red sun field.
I guess it just didn't get mentioned that like we know that red sun drains your power. I don't know. It's
Well, because Millar and the Brain mentioned it when they're at Cadmus.
Oh,
yeah. They're like, the robots react to you. Like you react weirdly to the sun field.
Yeah.
And he was like, has the general found you yet? He's like, what do you mean?
Oh yeah. They sort of planted it, but it's another thing I like about this show is that there's so much dramatic irony because we, the audience, are expected to be giant Superman nerds who know all this lore about him, but he doesn't know this yet. And that's a thing that they also did in the Legion of Superheroes cartoon, because the whole first season, it's like Superboy, he's not been Superman at all. He's running around with the Legion in the future, but Brainiac 5 knows all of the Superman lore and is like trying not to give him spoilers, but like whenever he's like, oh, I don't understand why my powers aren't working, you're like, why is this rock making me sick? Brainiac 5 is just like, no spoilers. Preserve the timeline for the love of God. It's always fun when they do that.
Yeah, the show is having so much fun with the fact that we are those Superman nerds. One other thing I want to talk about in this episode is the race between Lois and Vicky Vale.
Yes.
No one scoops Vicky Vale. No one scoops Lois Lane.
That was so fun.
I love the two. I talked about this last time that it feels that Vicky Vale was set up to be like the adult Lois Lane, like the archetypal Lois Lane that we're used to seeing in material. You know, like the fact that she's depicted as a brunette who, you know, just like I said, just like looks like what we're used to thinking of for Lois Lane. And then we have the very different Lois Lane of this show. It's fun seeing them spar with each other, especially like with her proving herself to be the better reporter, able to write the story like while on the back of like what was it, like a security truck or something that was pulling out.
Yeah. I like that it's kind of highlighting this overarching theme, which is like there are these like fun little petty rivalries, but ultimately most of the people in this show are fundamentally decent people who are looking out for each other. Because when Vicky's like impressed with Lois, she's like, I'm offering you a job because I think you're really cool and smart, and like it's cool that you scooped me. I'm not about to swear vengeance, which really kind of highlights that like all the supervillains Clark deals with are sort of the anomaly, you know, like the guys that can't let it go.
Well, sort of. This season, most of the villains from the previous season are no longer villains by the end.
Well, yeah, that's true. And I think that that's fun because it kind of highlights like Clark's approach of just being pretty much endlessly patient and forgiving with all the people he deals with really keeps paying tremendous dividends in almost every case. It's just dealing with Waller and Luthor that's the problem.
Yeah. So why don't we talk for a second about the steel armor? Because I like it overall, but I have like 2 notes. One, it's going to look great with a cape when they finally put a cape on it. If they do, because like that giant suit, the way it looks like with a cape would like just be so goddamn cool.
Well, it's gonna look completely different. I'm pretty sure because Lex takes.
Well, no, it looks.
Well, but he has it back in the finale.
He
like
clearly
steals
builds
it.
a new one that looks the same or gets it back.
I guess I have one art direction complaint about the show, which is all of the robots kind of look the same.
Yeah, this one doesn't look quite different enough. And here, this gets into my other note, which is that I think that's why his head is exposed. But I would argue that if he had the steel humanoid face, but just like really fucking big, would look distinct enough from the rest of the robot suits in this series, and in fact actually more distinct because his head being exposed means that in the group shot with all of the super criminals who have like tech powers at the end of the season, it means he just looks like one of them. It's weird for him not to have a helmet. Let's just say that part out loud in a fight. Like it's weird that he doesn't have it. Like I think that they just leaned in, and I hope they do when they inevitably like have some sort of nod to the reign of the Supermen.
You know, I don't want to sass. I hope they don't do that in season 3. I hope that they save that for like a theoretical season 4 or 5.
I hope they don't do the death of Superman. Let me be clear on this one.
That's it. Yeah.
It's the fact that they're showing that they have a Con-El Kent, like SDCC just happened, and there was like spoilers for Con-El coming in season 3.
Way too many spoilers out of fucking Comic-Con.
So whenever they do the nod to the reign of the Superman stuff, because I think that they probably aren't going to do Death of Superman.
This is way too early to do Death of Superman. You can't do Death of Superman until he's been established.
It's also happening simultaneously because like this is the season finale of the most recent season of Superman and Lois, and going into the plot for the last season of Superman and Lois. Like they're doing the Doomsday stuff. So like I really hope that they don't do Doomsday, but like I think if that Superboy is showing up and like Pet Theory, that Superboy, and by Pet Theory I mean like other people on the internet have said this, but I agree, future child of Lois and Clark.
Oh my gosh, they're future Trunks. Of course they are.
Trunks.
These fucking nerds. They can't resist. No. They're going to give him a little short crop jacket and we're all going to know.
Like the shots kind of looked like it. It also looked like he was part Asian.
He does have a short crop jacket.
God damn it. God damn it. You know what? I actually like that better than just making him a dipshit clone of Clark. I was reading through those issues of Reign of the Superman, and look, Steel and Clark teaming up after Clark comes back from the dead, that's great. Superboy being there, he is so 90s annoying. Like, because of course Steel and Clark are very business-like. They're like, all right, boys, let's take him out. And he's just like, take him out? Maybe if they were Michelle Pfeiffer. And I'm like, just get out.
I would argue that those are worst in the issues where they're teaming up because those are generally not the ones written by like the Superboy creative team.
That would make sense.
Carl Kiesel and Tom Grummett like go on and do a really good run. They go from the Adventures of Superman, which is where Superboy shows up, and then they like go and have the Superboy book. And I always felt that like the 90s-ism are way worse when he shows up in all the other books, which is usually when he's teaming up with the other characters.
Well, it's often the case when you cross over two characters, they kind of have to be mutually flanderized in opposite directions to really highlight especially when they're all superheroes who are fundamentally good-hearted, decent people who will try to do the right thing. So it's like, okay, they're all going to act the same in a crisis. So how do we distinguish between them? But yeah, they're absolutely Mirai Trunksing us. I can't believe this.
No.
When inevitably they have Steel in the shot with him, I do hope he gets the red cape, and I do hope he gets a proper helmet, and hopefully that helmet is the metal version of his own head. That is his usual design.
I don't think they're going to do that because it's really hard to justify.
I know.
They're probably just going to give him an Iron Man helmet and call it a day.
I know, but like this is a show where they could make it work, and it would look different from everything else, which all have like just like robot heads.
Yeah.
But it's also the same show where they gave Intergang identical outfits for the finale, where they had unique costumes in season 1. So I don't know. I don't think they're above it. We'll see.
We'll see.
I don't know. Anyway, moving on to Two Lanes Diverged.
I wonder what happens in this episode.
I know, right? Actually, we didn't talk at all about how Sam Lane was living with Jimmy and Clark in the previous episode.
Clark and Jimmy.
Yeah, this was, again, the dread was building for me. I was like...
Frustrating.
Like, again, it's very intentional. And there are so many points in these episodes where it's like, Clark and Lois both need to talk to each other, but oopsies, a thing has interrupted, and then we can't ever speak in the downtime. Never.
Yeah, it's the episodes that made me very aware that there is a void in between shots that appear on screen, and they really expect us to believe that they go through entire days working at the Daily Planet, entire evenings, just not talking to each other, and that was frustrating when I felt conscious of the limitations of the medium, and they were not able to talk in those moments on screen, and also were not able to talk to each other at any point off screen. It was like, guys, come on. This is where I was really starting to struggle with this season.
Yeah. We recorded after after episode 7 came out, because we were talking after episode 4 came out. We were like, uh-oh.
Yikes.
Because, like, the quality of season 1 was so good, and then the quality of season 2 has been so good for the most part. But there's those little cracks of like, okay, I'm being annoyed, but is this Schrodinger's bad writing? Is it doing this on purpose? Is it going to pay it off in a satisfying way? I don't know yet. And then we get to this episode and it's like, I thought we dealt with this in season 1 because so much of what happens in this episode, we'll get to it. I still, having enjoyed season 2 thoroughly, I still think episode 4 is legitimately bad in a lot of ways. Not in all of them, but in a lot of them.
So, this is the episode where we get the Star Labs Symposium, where Jimmy is invited to be the lead speaker. He thinks because he's Superman's best friend, and that's a good thing, when it turns out that that is not exactly the goal in this one. And so we get that payoff for that Lex Luthor. Thanks, Jimmy, for inspiring me to do this.
Called him a real pal. The audacity. It's not your pal.
Right in front of Clark, too.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, this was when I could smell that the show was speedrunning Clark's isolation arc so that he would feel lonely enough to summon the Kryptonian, his only remaining relative, which is, again, fine. They had to get there at some point. And given how the rest of the season was paced out, I understand why they had to speed through it for this episode. But a lot of it is just built on, like, none of these people can have a conversation. And they go as far as, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. I don't know. I don't know, man.
I mean, I enjoy Jimmy and Clark like having like cool suits for the symposium that like Jimmy like buys from.
That was very
like,
cute.
That's a fun moment,
like
especially when it's just like I like the glasses and it's like the flip up sunglasses. Like Clark is such a nerd in all of his circumstances.
Clark is just so enthused about getting to play dress up and to be Jimmy's bodyguard. He just thinks it's so fun.
We get a Toy Man reference in this, and this one's like an appropriate one. Winslow's shot is the informant that backstabs Sam Lane and goes to Amanda Waller. Like, yes, one, it's the Toy Man, and it's obviously the Toy Man because he has a bomb that's in a bear.
Don't touch the bear. Lois is going through an interesting arc in this episode. Writing-wise, I really like it. I have to say that. I think that the way that they built up Lois's insecurities throughout the beginning of the season, and specifically why she's acting this way about her dad, I thought was really interesting. And when it comes to a head, I thought that the way they made her react, again, internally made perfect sense with her character, because this is a person who is just absolutely racked with abandonment issues and self-worth problems. And Clark has zeroed in on that. It's like your dad makes you feel small and worthless. But also, this Lois is kind of motivated by spite. So when he finally is like, all right, I'm leaving, she's like, all right, fine. I will also leave. Be that way. It's like, there's a completely understandable emotional reaction. However, Clark has already had such a bad day.
Yeah.
Actually, I might have skipped ahead an episode. I'm sorry. No, wait, I remember what's happening. Sorry, a lot of the middle of the season kind of blurred together.
No, and that's fair. Like I said, this season feels very arc-focused as opposed to individual episodes having the same, like, standout details. Like, I had to remind myself, like, what is the actual conflict in this? Oh, it's because they, like, go to Toy Man betrays them, and they, like, lead Task Force X into the Star Lab Symposium.
And then they have a fight, and then even though this is a high-security building that has to have 1 million security cameras, Lex Luthor is like, you see, Superman definitely broke all this shit. And instead of saying, no, I didn't, Clark is like, no, you don't understand. And then they're like, you see, he's threatened by human progress. And everyone's like, wow, gosh, that's a good point. And I was like, we did this shit in season 1. Why are we doing this again? And in later episodes, it becomes clear only the government thinks of Superman this way. All the people still like him. We've still resolved that. He's not a hero with bad publicity anymore. It's just the rich and powerful who are concerned of this more powerful person coming in and disrupting that. That's fine. That's good characterization.
Well, it's not just the rich and powerful, because it's just more that there is a movement and that the entrenched powers are very much a part of that. Because I would argue that Hank Henshaw is not like the rich and powerful in this scenario.
Well, he works for the government. He's not necessarily rich, but he's very much in the system of the way things work.
Yeah, I just think that it's indicative that there is a movement of people that are rising up against Superman, even if it's not necessarily the majority of the population.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Side note, we haven't really talked about Hank Henshaw. He appeared, in, I think, the second episode?
He was in the first episode. He's
it's the first one. It's when...
He identified the asteroid that,
I like the design of Hank Henshaw looking basically like Superman. I get the impression that when we ultimately get Cyborg Superman, that it's a cyborg using technology to emulate Superman's powers. Is like how I'm going to guess that they're going to do it, because we saw a lot of Superman powers being emulated at the Star Labs thing, including flight.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
Just because he's already got the frame, so all he needs is robot parts, and he would look like the Cyborg Superman. He doesn't look like a totally different person, and then clone a body or whatever he does.
It's so complicated.
I mean, let me phrase that. I know when I say whatever he does is me grossly overshadowing. Yeah, no, he clones a body because he's made from the parts of Superman's rocket.
The simple explanation.
Yay, comics.
This episode builds a lot of emotional tension up to a head. It does a solid job of being kind of a turning point in the season, because Sam Lane just fully removes himself from the equation at the end of the episode, basically being like, my presence in this is unsustainable. And Lois being like, no, we can keep brute forcing this and it'll be fine. And he's like, yeah, no. I think that he made the correct tactical decision in leaving. However, I also think that Lois reacted exactly like we thought she would. And again, I think this is good writing. It is often good writing for characters to act in ways that I find personally profoundly frustrating.
Well, at the very end of the episode, when Clark is outside their window, and it's like, he's weird, and she's like, he is, and then he flies away, and then it's like, but that's why I love him.
Yeah, literally the plot of Shrek, and it's like
you have super hearing, dingus.
Yeah, flying away is not going to stop you from overhearing the rest of this conversation, man.
It's the only point in the season where I really felt the hand of the authors forcing the plot in a specific direction, because any normal progression of events, given the rules established by the show thus far, would not lead to this outcome. But this is the outcome we need for the second half of the season to go the way it needs to. So it's going to happen like this. All right. Fine.
Yeah, I mean, the first 4 episodes certainly feel like, I guess the first episode's wrapping up, and then the next 3 are a prologue to then the actual plot, which is the Kara and Brainiac plot of the season.
Yep.
Yeah. It's really just there so that we can have a little bit of tension between all the characters, and then the beacon can get activated. Yep.
Yeah, because they have to do it eventually, but because Lois established that she didn't want to do that, because while Clark has learned to sort of see Krypton as less of an evil thing, Lois has internalized her dad's perspective on that without noticing, which again, I think is really interesting, because they keep highlighting Lois has picked up more from her father than she wants to admit. And Jimmy calls that out verbatim later in the season, which I think was really good.
Yeah. I think Jimmy's the MVP for this season.
Jimmy has been the MVP for both seasons. Jimmy is doing great.
Yeah. I will say they did just a little bit in this episode of Jimmy didn't quite handle this the way he should have, which I thought was cool, because after Clark being like, you've saved me 13 times, and then Jimmy's like, oh no, I'm blaming myself for Lex Luthor being a manipulative jackass. Oh, this is terrible. It's kind of a weird change for Clark to suddenly feel like the most emotionally stable person in the party, but I think that's fine. I think it's good that he's kind of grown and gained a little bit of at least a better understanding of what he needs, which is why by the end of the episode, he's like, I desperately need somebody I can talk to about all this stuff, because my friends won't talk to me because they think I'm weird and they're not proud of me. I don't know. I like the way they built up Clark's angst for the season, because what they were doing, again, it's basically Chekhov's gun, but it's Chekhov's big glaring weak point for Brainiac to exploit later.
Moving on to the start of the real plot of the season, which is Most Eligible Superman.
I was dreading this episode from the description.
Which is a dating game episode. Plus the arrival of Kara.
Because we just watched episode 4. I had watched the season up to that point, but you caught up when that episode happened, Blue.
Yes.
And I was like, all right, tell me what you think. Have fun. Because I didn't want to be like, oh, dude, it's so weirdly not good at episode 4. Like everything else was fine. I was just like, okay, tell me what you think. And then you're like, was that episode bad? And I was like, oh, thank God. It's not just me. And then we were kind of like, we looked up like, oh, the episode description for episode 5. And it's like, oh, Lois and Clark's relationship is tested to the limits. And I was like, God damn it. We're already getting here. Okay. But then I watched it and I was like, hey, good news, dude. They get all that stuff out of the way really early. And then it's Superman again. Do you remember this is a show about Superman? It's not all about like, oh no, our relationships aren't working because we can't communicate with each other because the writers won't let us. Sometimes they get to punch each other real good.
Yeah.
So speaking of punching each other real good, we get that for real in this episode.
It's crazy how like the appearance of a superpowered supervillain is like a breath of fresh air in the show because it takes us out of the relationship drama zone and lets us like get stakes that aren't just like, will these two idiots be permitted to communicate in the framework of a romance slice of life shoujo anime? And the answer is always no.
Well, I mean, I feel like that kind of like slips over to like Jimmy and Kara then. Like the whole relationship dynamic like switches base to those two.
I thought that was really cute. I'll be honest, a lot of the first half of this episode, even though I was like bracing myself, I think I was pleasantly surprised by the way it played out. Because the stuff they did with like Clark and Lois being like, we have to pretend to not be dating. We have to be fake not dating for this episode. I thought that was like a good setup. And the fact that Lois is the one who suggested it and then immediately regrets it, I thought was interesting again. It just really, she accidentally proposed something that was going to make her absolutely miserable because of a particular cocktail of issues for the episode. And I thought that was fine. In the same vein as like Clark being so kind of starstruck about John Henry Irons, Silver St. Cloud in this episode. And he's just like enamored with all the public charity work she's doing. And when she's like, yeah, we could work together and like do like a, fundraise money for a good cause. He's like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. I would love to like the fact that it's not like fake dating and it's just more like open admiration for the public works this woman is doing. And Lois is like, oh no, I'm not jealous because she's absolutely gorgeous. I'm jealous because she's done way more with her life than I have.
Yeah,
like,
she gets that like whole speech from Cat Grant that like makes her feel that like she is doomed to be like an observer, like a passerby.
I thought that was a really interesting angle. Cat Grant being self-aware about like it's a reporter's job to look inward but not get to be included. And the fact that her and Clark are both experiencing profound alienation but from completely opposite directions and they can't talk about it because the writers won't let them. I just thought it was really interesting.
I do want to talk about the contestants on this game show. I rather enjoyed the collection of people. I have a question, which is, didn't Hank Henshaw say he was taking the wife on a trip in the first episode and then he's a bachelor on the game show?
Oh
no.
Oh no, that trip must have gone really badly.
But then, like, there's someone who uses they, them pronouns in there, which I thought was really a nice touch on that one. And then, like, Silver St. Cloud is presented as being, like, this, like, absolutely gorgeous thing. But, like, she's, like, a very, like, curvaceous woman, like, very full-figured. And I really like that kind of body positivity there. It's a good selection presented there.
Also, I think every single character there is some kind of deep pull DC Comics reference. I saw a few people doing the legwork to dig them all up.
I wouldn't be surprised with the other three. I mean, Silver St. Cloud is a historic Batman girlfriend. And then Hank Henshaw is, of course, the cyborg Superman.
I do appreciate that this show is, like, from the start gone to great lengths to be like, people are people, and there are a lot of different kinds of people in the world. Choices large and small throughout the show that have gone into that. Like, even in an episode that kind of, like, presents us with like, here's a cast of new like fun characters and such. It doesn't come of like, oh my gosh, who are these crazy people? It's like, yeah, no, that's like honestly like pretty on par for what we've gotten out of the show so far, which is just nice. This is pleasant.
Yeah. And that was what we were getting up to with Clark and Lois through the whole episode. But we also get Kara, and she's so good.
Cute with Jimmy. Like the two of them are like have such a wonderful day on the town.
What is this thing? Ice cream?
This is a ship I have no objections to. And I like how Kara is immediately ride or die for Jimmy. I will make your enemies mine. Hell yeah, girl.
I love the miscommunication where he's like, I'm a boss of the planet.
And she's like, you are the boss of this planet. She's so good.
Yeah, leader of the planet.
She's so cute. And I think they did a really good job because this episode immediately tells the audience, like, this girl is not evil. She is sweet and naive, and she mentions she has a strict father, and that's an immediate red flag. And she and Jimmy are hitting it off, and Jimmy is the best judge of character in the entire show. So it's like, great, this is going great. But people who were paying attention to the episode 4 ending are already like, when's the armored shoe going to drop? When is this going to go horribly wrong? And they start setting up the dominoes pretty clearly as Jimmy's like, I got to get you to your cousin, like now. But meanwhile, Superman is in the middle of this ridiculous pageantry that even he thinks is dumb. And like, it's the perfect setup for a kind of frustrating miscommunication. But again, intentionally frustrating. We're supposed to feel this way. And like, similar to season 1, the first half of the season builds up to a miscommunication, and then the entire back half of the season is dedicated to cleanly resolving it. You can kind of feel it starting around this point. We're really coming to a head at this point. And then it's like, they can't possibly make this miscommunication stuff worse after this. Now they have to resolve it like Superman would, by like finding the correct thing to punch.
Well, I mean, because they were all kind of avoiding each other this episode too.
Yeah.
Because it's a hangover from the last episode where Jimmy's avoiding Clark, Lois is avoiding Clark and Jimmy. And then Clark sees Jimmy and Kara running off in the distance when he's calling Jimmy. Yeah. So everyone's like, oh, no one wants to talk to me. My feelings.
Yeah. It's just the rejection-sensitive dysphoria nightmare episode. But yeah, I love the way they handled Kara, and I love the way that they show how like she switches on a dime, not in a like, oh, she's gone from normal person to evil. It's more like she's so overstimulated, and if one other person makes a noise near her, she's going to start heat lasering things.
Yeah, when she like squeezes the bar and like leaves her like fingerprints in it, and then Jimmy clocks it, where it's like, wait, your cousin is
Yep.
He gets it immediately.
But yeah, I totally get it. They walk in there and there's just like so much noise and lights in her face, and she's like clearly so frustrated by this whole situation. And then when she like goes and confronts Clark, and he like is like, I have to go do something important, and he's like trying to be polite in that moment. He's not being rude to her, but it comes off as rude because like she doesn't register that he has no idea who she is.
Yeah.
You turned on the beacon. You know me.
And she doesn't register that he is in the middle of a room full of people who are all trying to get his attention, because that is the purpose of the pageantry he's in. She just doesn't have the context for it, and he doesn't have the context to know that what he just said was very hurtful unintentionally. Because like, he's desperate for family, but he's not desperate for people in general. Like that's the whole thing of it. Like, he needs people who can understand him. He wants his family. He wants people from Krypton, but he's also kind of a media darling. Everybody in this room, except for Hank Henshaw, who left after being alien racist at him, everyone in this room really likes him. And Kara is the completely different kind of desperate for understanding. And that's why she immediately goes from like, I thought you would be the person who understood me, but you're not. And it's interesting because it kind of parallels what Lois is up to in this episode, where it's like, I want this thing so badly that I'm going to reject it before it rejects me. Because like Lois did that to Clark with like, I want this relationship to work, but I'm not good enough for you, so I'm going to reject you before you reject me. And Kara being like, I desperately need my family, but you've messed up our first impression, so I'm going to fix this, the Brainiac way. I hadn't made that connection before, but I think it's a very interesting little parallel in the way those two are maladaptively coping with their stuff.
Yeah, certainly a lot of relationship drama going on here, and exploding into both the breakup of Lois and Clark in this sort of like, he's like, are you breaking up with me? And we never actually get like real confirmation that that's for sure finished, but it's enough that they both feel that way at the end of it all. Yeah.
She's like, oh no, I broke up with him. And he's like, I can't believe she broke up with me, even though the conversation didn't quite end. So it's Schrodinger's breakup. And again, this is the part where it was a huge relief that it broke out into Superman action, because I was like, thank God we don't need to resolve this slowly and painfully. We can just have the problem be the plot. And as soon as it was clear that like, oh no, they're going to capture Clark, I was like, thank fuck, because that means that they can bundle the resolution of their relationship with a dramatic rescue, which is so much easier writing wise than just sitting them down in an empty room being like, talk out your feelings. Leave nothing to chance. The more dramatic the reunion is, the less explaining you have to do.
And this is a dramatic separation, at least, because, man, we get a real good goddamn fight.
I love this fight so much.
Like, man, we are getting the Dragon Ball Z level kind of violence there. So the armor, I feel like that she's first wearing is just because that was the fake out armor at the beginning or at the end of the previous season. Like, I don't feel like it really serves a purpose. But her armor that has like the heat vision augmenter is so cool. We get beam struggles.
Not just a beam struggle. I liked the fight, and then it's like, oh no, civilians are in danger. It's time for Clark to develop another power. Which one is it going to be? Frost Breath is always the weeniest looking of his powers. He has to do the big, like, cartoon wind cloud thing, like big puffed up cheeks. And then somewhere along the line, someone was like, hey, you know what a breath weapon looks like in D&D? But what if we gave Clark one of those? And it looks so good. It's the coolest it's ever looking, like it frosts over his face. I was like, that's the part where I went from like, okay, this is better than episode 4 to like, this episode is so good, Blue, you have to watch it. I'm telling you, it's got the coolest frost breath I've ever seen.
They're back, baby. They're back.
Made the season for me. It could have stopped there and I would have been happy.
I love that was a new power that Brainiac hadn't seen and that he then wants to study further. It's a fun moment there where it's like, it goes from we have no need of weakling to being like, oh, interesting. Hang on, bring this one.
Never mind. Gimme.
Kara, I request a takeout order.
That fight was so good.
Oh, yeah, such a good fight.
It was so good.
But I love the early impressions that we get from Brainiac. The allusions to Kara having a strict father, and then like the little bits of dialogue that we get as he's over calm, and the fact that we see his hands and see him to sort of like set up what we're going to be getting in the rest of the season is really fun there.
Is this the first bit where we see him use the comply thing on her? Because I think it might be. She's like hesitating a little bit, and then he's like, hey, you should do it. And her irises go gray for a second. And it's like, uh-oh, there's something hinky going on here. But also, this is another thing where it's like in story that's like, oh no, that's bad. She's been kind of brainwashed. But out of story, it's like, oh, thank goodness she's been brainwashed, which means making her a good guy has just become so much simpler because she's not really completely cognizant of her actions a lot of the time. And they really kind of expose that more in later episodes of like, how many atrocities has she done and how culpable is she for them? Because that's going to determine how difficult it is to turn her from this into Supergirl. There's a lot of like, oh, thank goodness, she's just been horrifyingly psychologically manipulated and tortured her whole life. Phew. Then she's just got a tragic backstory. No moral culpability whatsoever. I don't know. It's in the same vein of like, oh, thank goodness, Clark has been beaten unconscious and kidnapped by aliens. Now he and Lois don't need to talk about their feelings. Like everything is relative in fiction land.
So going on from there, we split our party and thus have two different stories going on simultaneously.
Yeah.
So next up, we've got the machine who would be Empire. I want to lead off with, I find that the relationship between Clark and Kara in this is very cute. Like the fact that we get like a space snowball fight between them.
It was adorable.
It's a very packed episode in terms of like emotional beats that we move on, because we also get like all of our Brainiac stuff in this episode.
I also like how they're just kind of planting like Superman's suit can give him a space helmet if it needs to, but he also doesn't need one because he can breathe in space. It's like, great, amazing. Filed under things he would have never thought to check. And I love how Kara's a goofball, and she really is enjoying having family with her.
Yeah.
Because it immediately endears us to her after. Because, like, of course, we had the whole last episode where she and Jimmy are hanging out and being adorable. But in this case, it's like, that wasn't a fluke. And, like, Weapon Kara is not her true self. This nerd is her true self. Weapon Kara is the influence of whoever her father is. And, like, we see enough of it to be like, that's not Zor-El. No way. But I like that Clark doesn't figure that out for a while.
I was surprised that she said, who is Zor-El? That was surprising just because, like, she knows at least that his name is Kal-El. And I like the way that she says Kal-El, by the way. She, like, has, like, a rolling L sound in the middle there.
Kal-El.
Kal-El?
Yeah, all one word. Kal-El.
Kal-El. I thought that was a really good bit of just, like, quick storytelling that, oh, Brainiac has just made himself completely in charge of her education. Like, whatever plan Zor-El had to like drop in a little AI, educate her that way, that all went out the window because Brainiac
it just seemed
is
interesting that she would know her cousin's full name and not know the name of her father. Like, like when it's like, who is Zor-El? It's like, well, the L part should tip you off that it's a family member of yours.
Yeah.
Was the only weird spot
but,
there, but like that, not a big deal. Cause like, I agree with you that like, she definitely has no idea who Zor-El is. It was just surprising that she doesn't even have like the most basic version of that.
Yeah, I suppose.
Oh my gosh, you know Jimmy?
Right.
You like Jimmy?
I thought that was so
You like
cute.
Jimmy?
Her having the like the relics of her adventures was like really a fun detail, and specifically the Jimmy stuff. It's like, how'd you even know Jimmy? Like
I think that it's so cute because in a way, this is also the most free we've seen Clark all season.
Yeah.
And like Kara calls that out. She's like, you restrain yourself around them because they don't understand you. But around me, you can go full power. We can have the fullest power snowball fight that's ever been. But it also just extends to like, Clark has never had a family member he can tease. You know, he's never had siblings. He's never had cousins. So finally, it's like, oh my gosh, a person who I'm kind of equals with, who I can just be goofy around. And they both kind of have that. And it's really beautiful. And it kind of highlights that like, oh, okay, like Clark was right to activate the beacon and call her down because she's in a bad situation and needs help, although she doesn't realize it. But also, she and Clark immediately have this beautiful rapport, and it is a dynamic that he cannot get with anyone else. Like him and Jimmy are friends, but ultimately Jimmy will always be Superman's pal. He will not be, you know, Superman's brother or Superman's equal, that kind of thing. It's not how their dynamic has ever worked, even though Clark probably doesn't like thinking about it that way. But with Kara, it's like, wow, we really are similar in a way that nobody else can be. And it's just that family thing.
Yeah,
And I think
it's
cool.
a really beautiful relationship that they develop in this all. Also, I want to talk about like the memory stuff in this episode. Like, I'm not entirely clear how it's like distinctly separate from the Black Mercy that happens later in the season, but at the very least, like the Kryptonian memory, like visions that Kara is able to show Clark.
The Matrix.
Well, yes, it's super like the Matrix. Actually, not so much like the Matrix as in like the whole Matrix, but like the training programs that they use in there. It's like, hey, the woman in the red dress like felt very much like the like, oh, this is, you know, I forget the names that she gives them, but it's just like, this is Jack's citizen. This is, you know, like the she's like all the activities, like she's given like so much personality to all this because this is the only media she's been allowed to absorb her entire life, which is just like, here's this like college tour video of Krypton here.
It's like the only book she was ever allowed was a Where's Waldo thing, and she's given names to every single background character. And again, it's so good and so heartbreaking because we're seeing this from Clark's perspective, who, you know, grew up in like a good situation with a family that loved him, and immediately like the red flags are going off. It's like, what do you mean this is the only thing you've ever... Wait, you seem really obsessed with like strength and training and what your father says is okay. Like, should we talk about this maybe? But for just a little while, because he still thinks that it's Zor-El that he's going to find. He still thinks he's got another living relative that's going to be on the other end of that spaceship. But oopsies, that is not what is happening.
Before we move on, I do want to say also Clark's memory of playing catch with his dad and like being encouraged to throw it even slower this time, or like that was such a good moment there, because there's always that question of like, well, if Clark has his powers, how is he disciplined? Like, how is he, you know, parented? You know, at the beginning of this call, like I had my daughter in the room with us, and like there was quite a few points where like if she had super strength, I don't know how like anything would have happened just now. Like sometimes you just have to pick up your child.
You're going into air prison. I thought it was really interesting how, from Clark's perspective, this is a very fond memory of like his parents understanding what he's capable of, and that in order to interact with the world in the way he wants to, which is to not break things, he's going to need to be taught how to do that. Like, this is a loving thing that they are doing. It's essentially like, hey, we're going to get you to the point where you can do what you want to do, which is be out in the world. Whereas from Kara's perspective, it's like they're teaching you to be weak. They're teaching you to limit yourself because you're better than them, but you could be more. And I like how both of their perspectives make sense, but Clark's is fundamentally correct. And we know this because Kara's idea that like being the strongest is the best is not correct. It's in Brainiac's interest to teach her that and to make her not question it under any circumstances.
Yeah.
Also, Thanagar pulling out for the coolest bird planet. When they name dropped Thanagar, I was like, wowzers, Thanagar? Are we going to see like a rebel sect of cool Thanagarians? And it's like, no, sorry. They are all dead.
But you get that cool like reflecting wall thing.
Yeah, I guess
I was like, that's cool.
She killed them slow enough that they had time to make a mural about it first. I don't know.
I mean, maybe we get Thanagarians out there somewhere else who have a grudge to hold against her.
That wouldn't surprise me. I think they could do a lot of stuff with that.
Don't let them all be gone, please.
Yeah. We need at least 2 to go to Earth and become space cops.
Well, we know that there's a whole civilization living under the Earth, as shown in the famous Studios Superman cartoons.
All right. Yeah.
Now, while the Thanagarians are apparently all dead, they have been preserved in a certain sense in the holodeck scene, which we alluded to before. God damn, so fucking cool. The Green Lantern as monk concept, I loved so much.
I liked that a lot. And I also like the little side note where Brainiac is like, yes, I took scans of their brains. I was like, good, that's what Brainiac is supposed to do. Brainiac is supposed to preserve data and then destroy it. But then that little touch of like the Green Lantern hologram crying, I was like, oh no, this is like some kind of hellish purgatory situation, isn't it? This is bad. Like I knew it was going to be bad. It's Brainiac, but like that's worse than I was expecting.
Yeah, I adored that detail, and it made me wonder. So his base is called Kandor, which is, traditionally the bottled city that from Krypton that has like a ton of like tiny little Kryptonians. And I thought like, well, is he going to have all the scans of all the Kryptonian brains in the computer system of this? And I guess the argument is that Brainiac himself is the memory of Krypton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least he thinks he is.
It was an interesting, I guess, not missed opportunity. They definitely did it on purpose. Like if they didn't want to bring up the Kandor thing, they wouldn't have named it that. But it was a strange pull to then not deliver on any of its traditional form. And also, this Brainiac doesn't do the iconic thing that standard Brainiac does, which is like, I will steal this example of this civilization, preserve it, and then destroy the original. Like, his reasoning for it varies a lot of the time. But in this case, I kind of like it because he's like, I am the only part of Krypton worth preserving. And that is so interesting. Because it's a form of egotism you don't normally get from him. A lot of Brainiacs are basically just purely mechanical, incorrect robots that think that their flawed programming is the way that they should interact with the universe. And I like that this Brainiac has enough of an ego to be more interestingly incorrect about what really matters. And that makes him more dangerous because instead of having perfectly preserved little pocket cities that Superman can put back later, it's just like those planets are dead. And I made Kara do it because she's my most effective gun. Sorry, bucko.
Well, and that's the area where it does feel more like the Eradicator from the 90s Superman comics, like where it is a Kryptonian intelligence. I mean, for one thing, the Eradicator is actually a Kryptonian intelligence, whereas Brainiac in the comics is a different alien species computer, Kalu. Yeah. And that, again, was introduced in the animated series where they made a Kryptonian. I don't mind making Brainiac Kryptonian. I do need to be very clear about that. And so I think it generally is going to make it resonate better in later adaptations like it does here. But like I said, it does have that resemblance to like this Krypton superiority thing that goes on with the Eradicator and like is present here with this version of Brainiac. And like I said, it's just an interesting comparison. It's not necessarily like a profound detail.
I think it's very plausible that they deliberately drew on that characterization for Brainiac. To be like, we're not just pulling this out of nowhere. There's already a character kind of like this one, but he's got more in common with Brainiac than with the Eradicator.
Right.
And he has less of a redemption arc.
But it is wild that they do so many like name drops in here, and like they could do other ones and have it be less divergent. Specifically, like calling it Kandor, and they could have called it Argo or Argo City.
Oh, that would have been dark.
Yeah, like that would be like a direct allusion to like Supergirl specifically. I don't know what you would do with like Thanagar or anything else like that.
Let it be there.
let them all be dead.
Let them live.
Please spare them.
But as we also did discuss, it is so fascinating that in addition to a Green Lantern and a Thanagarian, there is a parademon in that group.
Yeah. They really kind of fly that one, past real quick because it's not like he's like, I even fought Apocalypse for the season 3 fans in the audience. Like, it's just like, I've been collecting warriors, and it's like, okay, we got Thanagarian. Yeah, okay, cool. That's heartbreaking. We got Green Lantern. Amazing. That's Green Lantern. And then alien bug thing. Okay. And if you're not paying too much attention, it's just like that could be a lot of things. But it's like, oh, wait a minute. No, that's from Apocalypse. Where did you get that, sir?
I was expecting a nod and a wink at the camera. It's like, oh.
The parademon turns directly to the camera.
Wink.
I have to give them mad props though for not going like full Toriyama in design, because like goddamn, like the parademons look so much like you know how like Toriyama has like certain artistic flares.
Yeah,
his bug people often look very similar to one another.
Yeah, they all have big bug eyes and like that sort of cell mouth. The
season 1 filler of Dragon Ball Z, where the Saiyans go to the bug planet, then like blow it up at the very end and then come to Earth. It was just a little detour that they went on. Like those bug people look a lot.
Remember that bug planet?
Like parademons, and like the restraint not to just make the parademons look straight like something that Akira Toriyama would have created.
Yeah, true.
Yes.
Props to them.
Thank you for your restraint.
Now please exercise it in season 3 and don't necessarily. No, I love Mirai Trunks' future Superboy. I think that's gonna be so fucking funny.
Then we get the fun whole thing about like, well, I'm going to find out what your weakness is so I can kill you.
Yeah. This Brainiac is very candid. Maybe that's why they call it candor.
Hey, I admire your candor.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that it's interesting. This is the episode where I was like, okay, I think I see where they're going with this, but I'm nervous. I don't know what they're going to do. Because as soon as Brainiac is like, I think it's cool that your body has interesting powers, I'll just be taking that. And I was like, oh no, there's so many ways they could do this that would be super annoying. And they went with the one that wasn't. I was very happy, but we'll get there in a couple episodes.
Speaking of which, this episode ends with Kara kind of assessing her past after this all. First off, she discovers that the Thanagarians are gone. And then while crying in space, like all of a sudden a ship comes out of nowhere and it's Jimmy Flamebird.
Dun, dun, dun.
Jimmy the Flamebird. No, it's so good. Space is so big. It's amazing that happened. And yet I'm not mad even
well, especially because like when we get to this, all of a sudden, not only is it Jimmy and Lois in a ship, Monsieur Mala and the Brain are with them. Which, we're all big fans of that reinterpretation of the characters.
MVP.
Which means that this is one of my favorite styles of episodes, which is the, like, meanwhile, with the rest of the crew kind of episodes. And we get Olsen's 11, which, as a heist movie fan, like, God damn it, I love that name.
No notes. Perfect. His character was made for this.
So Jimmy and Lois recruit Livewire, who is confirmed to be in a romantic relationship with Heatwave, which I was all about their little relationship. The bit at the end was like funny and touching between the two of them. All very good stuff.
Secondary shout out. This episode came out the last day of Pride Month and they snuck it in right under the wire. Yeah. We got Mala and the Brain. We got Livewire and Heatwave. We got something for the girls and the gays.
Mala and the Brain actually refer to each other as husbands in this, which is also like some great details. Like this season in general is like keeping up what the first season had, which was like good inclusivity. Very happy about all of that.
Top tier.
So they recruit Livewire. Heatwave apparently doesn't like this plan and leaves.
I really thought they were speed running the fastest, like, they're lesbians, they've broken up in history. I was like, no. I was like, yeah, no. They had us in the first half, not gonna lie.
They then have to figure out, like, all right, well, now that we have a person who can sneak us into Star Labs to steal the ship that I think they set it up in the first episode, the existence of the ship where it's like, oh, it came from
that would make sense.
Amazotech and now Star Labs has it when they like go to Star Labs. It might have been in the Star Labs
tech demo episode 4 thing.
Expose, whatever, where Jimmy was railroaded into being part of why Superman is dangerous to all humanity. That whole bit there.
Yeah.
They set up the rocket. They have the means of stealing the rocket, but they have no means of using the rocket or finding anyone. And that's when they call in Monsieur Mala and the Brain.
Who Jimmy's been getting brunch with every week.
We have brunch with Jimmy.
So good at making the world feel big and lived in, specifically through Jimmy and his thriving social life.
Yeah, they reveal that having gone on a romp through the multiverse, that every world already has a Brain and Monsieur Mala, and so that they've had to leave each time. And this is also why we end up with a version of Mala wearing the classic outfit, the weird bandolier and the beret.
Because he stole it, I guess.
So wonderful stuff there. Like, I just enjoy their dynamic just in general. Like, every little bit with Mala and the Brain on screen was just wonderful stuff. And we get a whole heist sequence. Red, as you love to point out on your videos, if they explain what the heist is going to be, it's not going to go the way that they explain it.
Yeah.
Never fails. The unspoken plan guarantee. And so as they were explaining it, while it was also being shown at the same time, I was like, this is promising. This is often the way that this works. They clearly know this, but it's still very possible that everything is going to go sideways because they've established what they expect to find, which means that's probably what's going to go wrong. But it's fine. I'll be honest. I was blindsided by the twist of what happens. Pleasantly so.
So they seem to slowly run out of people as the Brain and Mala run off on a detour. And eventually Livewire gets separated and it's just like, oh, well, I guess it's just Jimmy and Lois. And they get to a ship and it doesn't seem ready to fly. But then Mala and the Brain show up. And then they're taking off, and that's when Livewire comes in to save the day, along with Heatwave.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. I was like, there's a slight possibility we get, like, the villain was like, I changed my mind, kid, I'm back. But the fact that, like, the whole time was, like, actually their plan is amazing.
That if Livewire has been on comms with Lois and Jimmy this whole time, there's a very likely chance that she's figured out that Clark is Superman.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially like the whole Lois being like, I broke up with Superman. I love him. Like, I have to get to space for him.
Or alternatively, Livewire's like, holy shit, does that Clark guy know? I guess that's why he's not here. Man, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, the world of who knows who Superman is in this is like getting blurrier and will get very blurry by the end of the season.
Yeah, they play a little fast and loose with it, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it doesn't like break my immersion in the rest of the story. It's more like it's like a fridge logic thing. You're thinking about it later and you're like, oh no, wait a sec. Is this fully out of the bag?
Yeah. And frankly, the people who know, it seems, are on good enough terms that they're not going to really like do anything about it. Both Livewire and Heatwave have experienced being heroes that like straddle sometimes into anti-heroes or borderline good characters at times. Livewire has recently, and by recently I mean in the last like 20 years as opposed to the last 30 years, in her limited amount of appearances in the comics, because she's not a very big character in the comics, has donned the electric blue Superman uniform and been in like his like proto Legion of Superman, like the one that becomes like the time spanning version of the team that like is in like All-Star Superman and stuff.
Huh.
So she's been sometimes on the more positive side of things, and in recent comics has been sort of like an anti-hero kind of character. And Heatwave, now admittedly this is a very different Heatwave, but Heatwave oftentimes has been like a mercenary for good causes, or sometimes even like kind of a nice guy, like a firefighter, except he's a firefighter that uses fire.
It's the best way to fight fire.
With more fire.
So this Heatwave being like a criminal, but like potentially a criminal who's like not that bad of a gal, and this Livewire who also doesn't seem to be like that terrible of a person, especially when we see them like team up at the end. You know, it's fine. Like they're thieves, but with hearts of gold.
Yeah, no objections here. I thought it was really fun, and it's a nice way of the narrative to sort of reward the way that Clark has been dealing with all of his enemies in this show, which is mostly just like trying to save them and then turning them over to the legal authorities when necessary. The number of like major threats that he's dealt with by hugging them is at this point up to like 3.
And that's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he had to save Intergang when he first met them because the tech was screwing up.
And he saved Livewire from her own malfunctioning power pack in the first episode. It's nice that it's not just, oh, he's a decent guy. He doesn't want to like hurt his enemies. He just wants them to stop, you know, causing problems. It's nice for the narrative to kind of reward him by being like, they've internalized that they want to help out too.
Also, speaking to the Dragon Ball Z-ification of Superman, which is that like Goku tends to make his enemies his allies after an encounter with them.
The exact opposite approach of like, through the power of incredible violence and wanting to inflict more incredible violence on each other, you will become my rival, rather than like, please, for the love of God, stop breaking things.
Still an optimistic approach to dealing with your enemies.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's also in the background, because this is the episode where like Luthor and Slade are having like this weird snippy dynamic with each other, and it's really funny. They keep calling Amanda Waller mommy, and it's weird.
I forgot about that.
You probably blocked it out.
I wish I kept that forgotten.
Yeah, we see the Metallos being tested out at quote unquote 10%. And I don't think they do that impressive of a showing, frankly.
No.
What do you mean, Case? They stopped the spaceship.
Yeah, momentarily, and then Livewire and Heatwave are able to take them out pretty easily. And it's just like at 10%, they like were defeated by these two.
They put on like a good showing. Sometimes Waller makes decisions that are meant to make her seem like really smart and like seeing the big picture. And sometimes she makes decisions so that she can put Lex Luthor in a position of power so he can be the real problem later.
That's one of these decisions right here.
Yeah, definitely.
I do want to shout out the Heatwave Livewire romantic speech that they give as they're flying off. Partially because this has payoff later that Lois calls back to it when she's apologizing to Superman.
Yeah.
But it's so wonderful where it's just like, and sometimes love is teaming up with people you hate to like go after the woman who kidnapped you. Aw, babe.
It's very, very sweet. It's a very romantic episode.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And it concludes with them getting the rocket off and like opening a portal and then coming out of the portal right where Supergirl is so that we can pick up at the exact same spot as we deal with the death of Clark Kent.
Which is one of the least encouraging episode titles in the whole season. It's like, we got Full Metal Scientist and then the death of Clark Kent.
So now we're in Clark's brain and we're seeing all the stuff going on. Meanwhile, we have Lois and Jimmy like confronting Kara. And it comes out that like Jimmy has this relationship with Kara, which Lois had not been aware of up until this point.
She's a little bit out of the loop.
Yeah, I was going to say it's more of like Lois is confronting Kara. Jimmy's kind of like, hey!
Yeah, they're accidentally doing good cop, bad cop, but of course Kara's not getting any of it.
Yeah.
She's not picking up what they're putting down. I think it's so interesting that Lois immediately defaults to her dad's MO in this. Like, she likes Superman. That doesn't mean she hasn't internalized all that stuff about aliens being a threat. And this is a really clean way to just demonstrate that. And Jimmy calls her out on it. And I think it's very cool how much she hates it.
Yeah. Again, the damage, the baggage that Lois is dealing with this season is a very big part of everything that we've been seeing this whole time. So I like that coming off of the heist episode, we basically do another heist episode to a certain degree where it's just like, we're going to sneak on board at this time.
Yeah.
Keeping the sort of like the energy from the previous episode going. So we get another bunch of badass fights. This season starts off slow in terms of like the big fights and picks up a lot. And we start dealing with that as we get a simultaneous Brainiac fight versus Kara and also a Brainiac fight versus Clark in his head after being subjected to all these like memories and trying to identify what is Superman's weakness. I like how when discussing all the fights Superman has been in, where it's like, oh, you can't be physically defeated. Like even your hardest fight has never actually been like a physical threat against you. It's so much more that there's stuff going on. And I'm like, yes, that is exactly how you write a Superman story.
Yeah. I think from a writing standpoint, nothing is more useful for a writer than a genius character who can figure out what's going on. And for the purposes of clarifying Superman, nothing is more convenient than a genius villain who wants to figure out what makes him tick. And the whole premise of this episode is Brainiac is like, oh God, I will find a way to defeat you, Superman. And is like, oh, I see. I was going through this all wrong. Just trying to hit you really hard isn't going to work. I just need to hit you where it hurts. And it's just like, good. That's so clean. And this Superman is profoundly emotionally vulnerable. So it really works out well for us, the audience, and not for anybody else.
Yeah. I like how we get a fake out that we think that Superman wins the day at the end of this all.
Yeah.
And that was actually just like part of the Black Mercy programming and like finally like fully taking over, like giving him that little dopamine hit of a victory just in time to be like, and now we've constructed the ultimate simulation to like trap you in.
Simulation complete. I gotta say, the Brainiac suit looks awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Put it out there. Let's put it out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Brainiac Superman redesign is so good.
I was like, you know what? I want to be mad. I'm not. This looks awesome.
Tits out, dogs out.
Thank you for calling this out.
We also had a call to our attention that he has side slits on his obliques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could just imagine Brainiac being like, Kryptonians photosynthesize. It is entirely tactical to expose more skin to the light of the sun.
Hideo Kojima feverishly taking notes.
I think the only part of his design that I was a little on, and a lot of people were, is just like the under the mouth.
Oh yeah,
like
the weird jaw, like
where it kind of looks like he's just been eating licorice really badly, and it's just like, nah. I think if you got rid of that or just turned it into like a little like chin.
Well, the way Kara's outfit has like a little chin strap.
Yeah, where it just kind of, it's not the worst. It's still a pretty solid look. And he's so distinct from Superman's normal design that even though I was like, oh no, he's going to use Clark's body for crimes, I was like, nobody's going to recognize him. His hair is completely
kind of a fake
different.
out because like you sort of are getting that like end of Superman the animated series kind of scenario, but it barely matters. Like we see the fight with Kara in the next episode, which we might as well just move on to because like the pace of this is, you know, we covered all the big beats of this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the closest we get is that Kara goes unequivocally from like Brainiac cannot be wrong to like, oh no, okay, I have to save my friends now because like Lois and Jimmy are like their helmets crack. So that funny haha prank that Kara pulled on Clark because he didn't know they could breathe in space suddenly becomes a lot less funny because now she has friends who can't breathe in space.
I love the whole Black Mercy redo here. It's so awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I think this is a case where like, it's different enough from the original that it doesn't quite hit the beats I really like about the original, but that's fine because it's serving a completely different purpose in the narrative.
Yeah.
I like that they just pull in just like, yeah, we need something to go into Clark's head and cause problems. We already have one of those.
We got a thing. Trust me.
Not to worry, I know a guy.
I can't believe I'm asking this. You said you have a boat guy?
Oh, we haven't even talked about Steve Lombard.
Well, we'll come back to him in a minute anyway, so we can heap some praise or whatnot on Steve in a moment. Before we move on, I do want to say, like, it is cool how, like, we examine all the different moments of Superman's life before the simulation is sort of, like, put together. It's like the processing is its own kind of thing that's going on here. It's very cool. It's a cool take on the Black Mercy. And I don't mind it being cybernetic instead of biological. Like, that was an irrelevant detail. That was just there for the sake of, like, well, we need something that traps Superman in hallucination. It's cooler being, like, a semi-magical plant. But, you know, that's also Alan Moore in the 80s while he was doing Swamp Thing.
Yeah. oh, a magical plant that does weird things to your brain. That's so unlike you, Mr. Moore. And also, they already established this technology in previous episodes. It was planting and payoff because that's what Kara used to show her memories and mention, like, yeah, Brainiac gave me these memories so I would have some understanding of my culture. It's like, oh, okay, so Brainiac can give you memories that you can project out and edit them. Yeah. That's interesting. Like, it's very good planting and payoff. And then the fact that he name drops, it's the Black Mercy. He's like, oh, no, that's what this has been this whole time.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no.
So moving on to Pierce the Heavens, Superman.
The Gurren Lagann episode.
I had a lot of fun with these name titles.
Yeah, I like how about 2/3 of them are like serious, tragic, like the death of Clark Kent, and then Full Metal and scientists. So good.
So here we actually get that mind-controlled Superman. And so we get to see a face-off between Kara and Brainiac-controlled Clark, which is quite effective. The fight choreography is really good here, and it's a different kind of fight choreography than what we saw in the first like face-off between Kara and Clark. Here, he's so controlled and so fast with his blocking. It's really like a martial art tour de force with superpowers.
Yeah, I think that the way that they choreograph Brainiac controlling Superman is fascinating, up to and including when they bust out kryptonite, and he just doesn't care. He's like, yeah, you might kill Kal-El. I'm still going to be fine. Just a good point. It's like he doesn't live there anymore. He's just using the body as a weapon.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Lois has gone inside the Black Mercy to try to free Superman. And it's wonderful. Her dad. Yeah, well, yes, exactly. They do a Groundhog's Day episode somehow in the middle of this.
Yeah, they stick her in a time loop, and then she tries to develop speedrun strats to break Clark out. It's so funny.
It's very Edge of Tomorrow. More than Groundhog Day.
Your name is Clark, and you're my boyfriend. What? Reset.
The bushes scene got me.
Yeah,
and she's like hiding in the bushes, and she's like, "What is that?" Reset.
Oh man.
And that's all happening simultaneously while Kara is trying to like defend Earth effectively from mind-controlled Superman. And we get this like more and more elaborate like speed run that we're going through, but we also get to see like, I guess, fractal personalities of Brainiac inside the Black Mercy, represented as Jor-El and Lara, trying to like argue and decide like what to do against this extremely annoying person.
Yeah, I love how much this is just profoundly like the power of love, and it's finally forcing Clark and Lois to talk out their issues, but with the caveat that neither of them can 100% remember what's going on. Again, like from a writing standpoint, this is so much smoother than if they could just sit down and talk it out without anything else going on. It's got so many heartwarming moments, a little bit where like Clark has remembered enough to be like, what do you mean you stole a spaceship?
You are
That's
real.
Insane. It is you. Just beautiful. Like, I love a moment of like recognition of like nobody else would be crazy enough to do this. It's just, so good.
There's some other good moments in here. We mentioned how like Vicky Vale is ultimately not a bad person, and she and Perry White team up to be the distraction to allow Steve Lombard to break out everyone. And we get
Steve Lombard and his wolf van,
which I love the wolf pack like noise. But when he's just like, when we saw that Flamebird was taken hostage, we went, nah. Such a great callback to his whole deal.
MVP. Yeah. I love how even the joke characters are fundamentally forces of good. And also I like how they're pointing out like, hey, Amanda Waller assuming direct control and instituting martial law because she hates one alien who has done only good things. Nobody liked that. 0% approval rating.
We kind of skipped over the whole thing that she put like all of Metropolis in martial law.
Yeah, that was just like a little quickie thing going on in the beginning of Olsen's 11. I think.
Yeah. It's like she took up all the evidence, all the feeds, all the camera stuff. It's like she does an interview on the TV station. The guy's like, it's kind of crazy that you're doing this because we have real footage of this happening. It starts and she cuts off. Like, oh, thank you so much. We really appreciate you for doing this. This is now classified information.
They were really highlighting that like everybody in Metropolis likes Superman. And that means nobody in Metropolis likes what Amanda Waller is doing to try and get rid of Superman. And it also kind of like softened the last remaining sharp edge off of the thing I was worried about with the brainwashed Superman thing. Because, of course, the whole dealio, the way they did that in Superman the Animated Series, is that it kind of gave him like a 0% approval rating for a while, where it's like, well, remember that time he got brainwashed by Darkseid? That sucked. We don't trust him anymore. But in this case, it's like, Amanda Waller already didn't trust him. She was already going to treat Superman coming back to Earth as an excuse to pull out all the kryptonite robots and beat the shit out of him. So the fact that when he comes back, it is Brainiac doesn't affect her judgment at all. It just makes her plan fail incredibly fast. And I thought that was great because it actually did a really good job of like smoothing over the way for, hey, now if Superman comes back, Waller is primed to see that as a good thing. And that's huge. Because she's really the only holdout, except for Luthor, who just hates him on principle.
Yeah.
Because they've already done a very careful job of establishing, like, season 1 was all Clark needed to get people liking Superman. Like, overall, he's got the public reputation he's supposed to have, which is big. And I liked that. But again, like, early in the season, I was really worried because they were really amping up, like, do we trust this alien with our security? So I'm really glad that they just kind of established, like, Waller was never going to be like, oh, no, now that Superman is evil, I don't trust him. No, she already was going to hate him. But now that she's seen what an evil Superman actually looks like, and then good Superman comes back to fix it, she's like, oh, okay, this suddenly seems better by comparison.
Well, here's the thing. Like, do they actually know that it is actually Superman?
That is the question. Because
like the entire time, like the entire time he says, I'm Brainiac. So they wouldn't really know. And
also, like, it's pretty clear that it wouldn't really, I guess the vibe I got is it wouldn't make a tremendous difference if it's like, oh, has Superman turned evil? And it's like, no, I'm an alien consciousness inhabiting his body. Like, if Waller was thinking clearly about it, she'd be like, oh, so he can be controlled by actually evil people. That still makes him a liability. Like, that's a concern that frankly is a legitimate thing about Superman. Like, he's so powerful. If he's vulnerable to mind control, he is actually a danger. But only if mind control like that exists. But in this case, I was kind of under the impression that, like, he doesn't look like Superman anymore, and he's insisting he's Brainiac, and she's just assuming he's Superman on principle because it's like Superman left, and now this guy's back, and he kind of looks like Superman.
Well, she was also primed that whatever thing was coming was going to be Superman, because when they're like, oh, there's an evil alien warlord coming, it's like, well, we're going to take out Superman when he comes. It's like, no, we're not talking about Superman.
Yeah, I think it's a little ambiguous if anyone thinks that Mr. Black Suit Boob Window was Superman. But I think it's pretty easy to swing it either way, because either it's like, that was Superman's body under evil alien control, but Superman came back and saved the day, versus that was some other guy, but good news, Superman came back and saved the day. It all calculates out the same.
If it had been, say, Zod as, like, the figure flying over there, who would be able to tell the difference necessarily if we're talking about, like, a similarly sized person in a black suit like that?
Yeah, it's like, I think he's a brunette, sir. Which is why I was glad that Brainiac Superman looked so different, and it wasn't just Superman running around being evil, because that was the thing I was really potentially frustrated by.
And he's like waving his hands, and like all their robots are being hacked and overridden. This will do perfectly fine for me.
That was the other thing. As soon as Waller was like, not to worry, my giant army of Kryptonian robots will be able to repel this threat. It's like, oh, honey, he's OS compatible with those things. You are so fucked.
Yeah, it's nice that they point out that, like, all the Kryptonian tech has similar weaknesses and similar systems.
Yup.
Yeah, the Metallas are not going to be a viable threat in really protecting the world from a Kryptonian threat.
Which is good because it encourages Luthor to go even worse.
Through this all, Lois reveals while she's inside the Black Mercy simulation that she has superpowers in this world because Clark has such a high opinion of her, apparently.
It's so sweet.
Yeah, it's wonderfully romantic in this whole thing, and it's just good-hearted anime bullshit when they, like, break through the sky that's, like, holding them back as they, like, come back into the real world. Fun stuff, continuing the sort of simultaneous like battle that we saw in the previous episode. In this scenario, now, like, the mind-controlled Superman is able to free himself, but sort of, like, goes down in the process.
Down somewhere no one saw him fall to.
Yeah, and he is kind of obscured by an anime dust cloud when his suit is changing back. So, I mean, who's to say? It doesn't seem to really matter. Mostly everyone's like, oh, thank goodness, Superman is back and can save us. Like, nobody was like, oh my God, Superman has turned evil, because Waller just assumed he was always evil. So they really did a good job of softening all the corners off of this plot point that I was really worried were going to be super annoying.
So why don't we move on to the finale, My Adventures with Supergirl.
Yes. So good.
So the Metallas have been taken over, and shit's gone bad. We see the stand of the Human Defense Corps trying to destroy Kandor, and it does not work.
At all.
Who could have foreseen this outcome?
Yeah, this is not going to go well. Waller decides to make a stand. Lex runs off. And then this is when we get reinforcements because the cavalry arrives. Livewire shows up. So does Dr. Irons making a reappearance.
I'm so glad. I really thought they were going to put him on the shelf because his suit got taken away. Of course, he just built another one.
Well, he really cares about his community.
Yeah. Sometimes that means you build a giant robot suit in your garage, even though your last one got confiscated by an intern.
Yeah. So we get all these people back, and Sam Lane makes his triumphant return as well, saving Amanda Waller.
They called him the main man, and I was so briefly excited and then so angry.
They called him the main man, and I was like, are we really getting Lobo in this finale? And then nope.
Yeah, it's like 7 characters we've already met and gotten established, and then also Lobo shows up for the first time. Surprise! I've been recruiting all your season 1 bad guys.
Putting together my own heist.
It's amazing.
You bastard.
Tragic.
But we get the final confrontation. Superman with the cavalry has his final confrontation against Brainiac, who uses the Eradicator protocols to put Kara into berserker mode. And Superman hugs her, and so does Lois and Jimmy.
By the power of friendship.
Yeah. Literally the power of friendship. We got every flavor of fighting off the brainwashing in this season, and I felt so fed. It was great. We got the I know you're in there somewhere fight. I think he even says that to Kara.
He does.
But we also got the full-on possession where it's just the power of love has allowed Clark to break out, and now he's back in his body, and everything's fine. We got all of them in the same 2 characters. It was amazing.
We get Kara and Clark, once Kara is broken free of her brainwashing, pushing the spaceship into the sun, which is always a classic superhero kind of situation there.
Just throw it into the sun.
Just throw it
into
on
the horn.
And I like a couple of things that happens here. I like when they are too close to the sun, and it's just I don't think we'll be able to escape the gravitational pull. But it's oh, hey, all the kryptonite damage that they had all of a sudden turns into golden sun veins on their body, which is a fun moment there.
Kara's oh, wait, we're Kryptonian.
Yeah.
This doesn't matter to us anymore.
Yeah, I kind of... This was an odd time to initially bring up the concept that the sun gives them power. I was you had so many opportunities to bring this up. I knew that. I expected Kara to know that. But the fact that it's oh, wait a minute, we're photosynthetic. It's just, I don't know.
It was that after oh yeah, we're Kryptonian. We don't have to breathe in space. And you forget the most important part is oh wait, the sun. Oh my gosh.
When Brainiac was wiping her memories, he got a little sloppy with it and accidentally erased Kryptonian Bio 101. She's just constantly rediscovering all of her powers.
Oh my God, I have heat vision? Ah.
Yeah, whoa.
So Brainiac in a last ditch, charges himself up with kryptonite. It doesn't work. And then he tries to use a kryptonite blade and scars Kara.
Briefly. It's gone in the end credits, so she clearly heals up pretty quick.
Oh, is it? It's still there when they go to play catch. So
yeah, it was part of a lot of her concept art was giving her a cool cheek scar, but it's gone in the ending credits, so it clearly goes away.
The sun healed her.
Yeah, she just flew into the sun again.
they defeat Brainiac, and Kara goes unconscious and wakes up at the Kent house. Then we get soup on the roof with them all.
Soup on the roof. Soup on the roof.
But then we also get some after credit stuff. So we get the LexCorp starting to get set up, and it looks like Lex and Deathstroke are now partners.
This is partners.
Yeah, they've put aside their differences, developed the most toxic yaoi relationship of all time. It's going to be great. This is going to be unbelievably messy.
We also see a Smallville barbecue with a lot of people from the show, which made me start to question wait, who knows what in this situation?
Yeah. Was this just Clark being wow, it's crazy that I missed all of that. Hey, you should all come out to the family farm for me and my cousin, who I've always had.
Who's always been here the entire time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Cat Grant was in that lineup too, which is asking for trouble.
I know.
Yeah, geez. There's so many reporters there. They did a lot of work to make the finale feel like a grand finale. You can really smell that they didn't know they were getting a season 3, and they were we're going to end this on a high note on God. And it worked really well. And I am excited to see where they go from here because they did such a good job of ending it very satisfyingly, really feeling like they wrapped up most things. We kind of breezed over it because the fight's really good, but it also resolves pretty cleanly with, again, power, friendship, hug. There's one sequence that I just loved, which is when Clark is basically running from Eradicator Kara, and she's flanked by this giant fleet of I don't know, heat-seeking missiles or whatever the hell Brainiac just fired, and it's terrifying in slow motion. And we see Clark panicking and panicking and panicking, and then we get this brief memory when he's a kid flying up above the cloud layer into the sun, and we see him calm down. and be like, okay, here's how I'm going to fix this. I love that moment so much. They do a lot of showing the moment when Clark is like, okay, I'm done freaking out about this. We're just going to solve this. And I really like it. Characterization-wise, it's great because he's such a nervous wreck most of the time, but he really does kind of thrive in crisis.
One thing we also gloss over is that Superman gets a new uniform in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Blue, do you have any opinions on the new uniform?
I think it's mostly fine. I don't like the shoulder pads.
I'm glad that the animators couldn't decide whether to include the shoulder pads from shot to shot, because I also don't like the shoulder pads.
There are a lot of visual glitches with this suit in the early minutes of this episode, because the line width of the gold border around the S changes radically from shot to shot. Sometimes it's thick, sometimes it's like barely even there. His shoulder pads change in size pretty notably. And there is one shot where he's like lying down on the ground or something, and he just doesn't have his belt. His belt is just not there. So I don't know like what back-end production pipeline led to this happening the way it did, but there's some wonky visual glitches with the suit. It's a good suit. Aside from the shoulders, I like it. I like the boots a lot. I really like the boots with the gold trim, but it's just a weird choice.
I choose to believe that because the suits canonically react like psychically to the mind of the wearer, he just can't remember all the details, and like every time he gets hit, it like changes a little bit because he's distracted. Also, bring back the shorts. It doesn't look right without the shorts.
It makes sense that this wouldn't have the shorts because like the shorts was the thing that his mom added as opposed to like the base Kryptonian kind of like design.
It would be so funny if Ma Kent is like, okay, you get the shorts and you get this fetching little tennis skirt that'll really help, you know. I could just really see that working.
Here's your skort.
Yeah. It's very utilitarian.
Yeah. I do like the Supergirl look though. And like they're fundamentally the same design, except her cape is like
it's a scarf cape,
Yeah,
like Brainiac had when he was Superman,
cool.
but good.
Or like Gohan has.
Yeah, also like Gohan has.
Oh, no.
I see you, villain. I've watched the same nerd shit.
So I love that look. And I love them like going off to like solve or I forget what the emergency at the very end of the episode is.
They hear somebody scream. It's just fun seeing two different people with super hearing in a group of people who don't have super hearing just be like, oh, you heard that too? Okay, we gotta go. Just again, just a little bit of visual storytelling of like, Clark's really not alone anymore. There's actually somebody else who's on the same page as him the whole time, and that's huge.
Yeah. A fun season. It doesn't have quite as many highs as the first season where each episode was like kind of a banger, but it's a solid base arc, and I'm really glad that we've been on this journey and that the show continues to know what it is, which is like taking the Superman lore and adding anime bullshit.
Yes.
I'm
That's
here
all
for that.
I wanted. Yeah, I was really happy with how the season wrapped up because as I've mentioned, there were a lot of points in the season where I was like, they could take this in a few directions and I don't like a lot of them. And then they always went in the direction I wanted them to go to. I felt very safe by the end of the season. But again, a thing I've said before, past quality is no guarantee of future quality. When we went into this season, I was nervous because season 1 had been so good. And then season 2, like when episode 4 hit, I was like, oh no, she's faltering, Captain. And then they pulled it back together and it was great. But my faith wavered. I thought maybe they were going to corrupt the incorruptible Superman and deny their own thesis about like Superman's more interesting when he's fundamentally an incorruptible good person. And then they didn't do that. And I was really relieved.
Yeah.
Don't make him evil, just make him sad.
Yeah, just make him angsty and then give him the power of love to fight it off with the anime bullshit. That's all I need. Power of friendship and hugs, baby. I'm excited for them to be like, you can't hug this one to death, Superman. It's got kryptonite in it. It's like, watch me. That's how we get Death of Superman, probably.
We'll see. I mean, the way the kryptonite like spreads in this iteration of it, like I could see that being like kryptonite like spikes coming out of a thing for Doomsday.
Oh wait, that's how they killed him in the movie that I didn't like. Well, anyway,
I don't know. Well,
we're not gonna talk about that.
We shall not speak that evil here.
Not the point. The point was this is another fun season. I really love Kara as an addition. I think this is going to be a fun foundation for season 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, Red and Blue, thank you for coming back for this conversation.
Yeah. Woo. Well, thanks for having us.
We'll loop back this time next year and see what we've got to talk about then.
As we've once again demonstrated, we have a near endless wellspring of Superman opinions ready to dish at any given moment.
Yeah.
Well, we've already said future Trunks.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, we've called that shot. That's
it should be like an annual tradition for us to just see which predictions of ours were right.
Ooh, true. Yeah. See if there's any of them.
I mean, I feel like they blew their load at Comic-Con, so that's not fair. That's
we had a prediction that didn't come true. We thought they set up Chekhov's invitation to go to Gotham, and it's like maybe Lois is going to go to Gotham at the end of the season. Like, obviously, Clark can go there whenever he wants, so like they don't need to break up or anything. But like Lois could go to Gotham, and this is how we get Bruce Wayne. And then the show said all that and was like, actually, no, she's going to stay in Metropolis and work at the Daily Planet. She doesn't want to be the next Vicky Vale. She wants to be the first Lois Lane. I was like, good, that's good. We could have had Bruce Wayne. It's fine. I'm not mad.
You mean you don't want the weird love triangle thing to happen again?
That's a good point, actually. I guess that wouldn't be good either. But there's so many good ways it could go. It's just, we called that shot because it would have been an easy way for them to be like, we're still going to be dating, but like a little bit different. But instead they were like, no, screw you. This is a shoujo anime. It's going to resolve satisfyingly with the romantic subplot. None of that, oh, we'll do it long distance bullshit.
I mean, does it count as long distance with Superman, though? Like,
well, that is the question, yeah. But I think that...
He said, I can be across there in 5 minutes.
I thought it was cute. But yeah, we were like, they could do that. And then they pointedly chose not to. And that was cool. I like it.
Yeah.
What about season 4? We get World's Finest for an entire season.
Allegedly, I read after we talked about this on our after show, I read that they have a bad embargo for
as if they couldn't sneak in like a
cowards.
The thing is, here's the thing. You can do the bad embargo, especially in early Batman. He is constantly taking on other identities to like sneak in and investigate stuff. No bad embargo, but we get Matches Malone. Right.
Or we just get Robin.
I'm calling that shot. Or we just get Robin. This would be very early for Robin.
No. Robin, like Bruce Wayne as Robin, which has sometimes been like lore stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Weird.
It's very Silver Agey. The big one that I'm drawing from is actually the 80s like retelling of the Batman origin, which was the Untold Tales of Batman, which was like, I forget who wrote it, but then John Byrne was the artist on that, doing like an origin story. And like they dwell on like, remember back in the day when I like was first learning to be a detective, I disguised myself as Robin.
That's so needlessly confusing. Yep. Robin is just Dick Grayson's circus outfit with a domino mask. Did he just call that shot?
He did.
And
he just
perfectly replicated
called the shot.
Wow, he really is the world's greatest detective, solving mysteries that don't even exist yet.
Yeah, well, this is like the same kind of like logic where they had like Thomas Wayne like wore a Batman outfit to a crime or to a costume party where he like stopped a crime, and that's actually why he was like gunned down by Joe Chill. The Batman lore is Byzantine and weird.
Yeah.
All the more reason the showrunners are probably like, we're not touching it with a 10-foot pole.
I'm holding out for Matches Malone. I'll be scouring the backgrounds for a guy who looks like Bruce Wayne in a fake mustache.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd be fine if next season they just tease Bruce Wayne the way they tease Lex Luthor in season 1. Mm-hmm. We could do something with that. I'm curious.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot of fun to see what happens with all this stuff.
I want this Superman to interact with more characters. That's really it. Especially after this season did so much work to set up like this Superman doesn't have to be alone anymore. Isn't that great? And it's like, great. All the people he's teaming up with are bad guys from season 1 and Steel. Can we please give him like Wonder Woman at least?
I mean, we could have had Anna Gary.
We could have had it all.
Or a Green Lantern.
Yeah, bring in a Green Lantern. Bring in John Jones. I don't care. I think it would be so fun.
John Jones might already be there.
He could be anybody. True, yeah. Oh, man. There's so many options. But the thing is, like, I've seen people occasionally complain about, like, oh, can't a show about Superman just be about Superman for a change? And it's like, yeah, but this is such a good version of Superman. I want to see him play off of more interesting situations. Giving him other characters who are his peers to interact with lets him show off more facets of his characterization. In the same way we got a side of him when he was interacting with Kara that we had never seen before because he'd never had the opportunity. This is a character that I want to see more of, and one of the ways you do that is by crossing him over with stuff. I'm excited for more, and I'm glad we're getting more.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if next season we get like a little bit more of the broader DC universe sort of unveiled to him. It would be in keeping with like the pace that like the animated series did, where it's like, okay, we trickle in a Flash episode here, and then eventually a Green Lantern episode and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of little stealth pilots.
We got our Steel episode, and
from the future.
We'll see what else. I wouldn't be surprised if we get some more of the broader DCU. We know that we're getting Superboy, so we're calling the shot that it's a future Trunks situation, but maybe not.
So they basically comboing him with the like Young Justice Impulse origin, where it's like he's from the future, but he's pretending.
Well, I mean, we already know there's a whole legion of Loises out there.
True.
So anything is possible.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if they're ever going to bring in a Brainiac 5 after what they did with this Brainiac. I wonder what that would look like.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
Unhealthy.
Yeah. Also, this Kara is already in a committed, adorable romantic subplot with Jimmy. So, like, why would you even bring in Brainiac 5?
Yeah, that would be wrong. That would be so wrong.
Also, with Brainiac being her dad, it becomes significantly weirder.
It's way creepier.
Yeah. All right. Probably no Brainiac 5.
I imagine that they are not going to do the Legion of Superheroes in the next season.
I mean, they're probably not even going to get to the formation of like the Teen Titans in this one. So the 30
probably not. Well, but the Legion is like part of like the young Superman lore. Yeah. So like it's not out of the question. But I doubt that we're going to get Legion of Superheroes in the next season.
31st Century is a bit of a tall ask for something that's probably not even going to let us see Bruce Wayne.
I wouldn't be surprised if we got a proper Bizarro next season. A clone of Superman would be fun to see in this world.
Oh, that would be fun. If we get a clone of Superman, but it's not Superboy, it's Bizarro. And Superboy is the Mirai Trunks situation.
Yeah.
There's a lot they could do. I'm excited to see it.
And hopefully we can pencil you guys in for the next time, and we can revisit this after season 3 comes out.
Yeah, sign me up for 1 year from today or whenever it's coming out.
So thank you again for coming back on the show. I'm sure, frankly, based on just like our respective audiences, that like the Venn diagram is a circle and your circle is way larger than ours. But what have you guys got going on? Where can people find you, follow you? Give your plugs, and we'll start with Red.
Most of our plugs are the same. Overly Sarcastic Productions on YouTube will get you both of our videos. We very occasionally post on Twitter these days. That's not even really a plug at this point. When we have the Overly Sarcastic podcast, which is like an after show, and then we record the after show, which is for our patrons, where we talked about My Adventures in Superman, I think 3 separate times at this point.
Just 2.
Well, season 2 we did twice, but I think we did one about the first season, didn't we? Maybe? I don't remember at this point.
I have no idea.
You at least referenced it because that's what prompted me to email you all being like, hey, would you want to come on to talk about it since it sounds like you like it?
Yes, always. But yeah, that's about it. I feel like everyone else on this call is so sleepy. I don't want to keep this going for long. Perfect. Yeah. We're handshake memeing over here.
On snoozing over here. Same plugs as what Red said. It's just YouTube and the podcast.
Also a book.
Oh, we don't need to talk about that. That's irrelevant.
Yeah, so the book, we got the comic, I'm on some D&D podcasts, but that's all secondary. If you want how we talk about Superman, you want the YouTube channel. There's a bunch on there.
Jmike, how about you? Where can people find you and follow you?
I'm not a YouTube celebrity. I'm not that popular. I'm just on Twitter at JMike101 occasionally.
Yeah.
As for me, you can find me on all the platforms with @symbols @Case Aiken, except for Instagram, where I'm holding on to my high school AIM screen name for dear life, where you can find me at Quetzalcoatl5, because I was very pretentious in high school.
You picked like the hardest to spell one.
Yeah, I know.
Amazing. How many Q's you got in this one? Go fish.
Otherwise, you can find us on our Discord server. We've got links on our website or all over the internet. If you find any of our social profiles, you'll find a link to our Discord, or you can come chat and interact with us directly. It is a really great time. Also, a great Discord server is the Overly Sarcastic Productions one.
Yeah.
So just chat in that. Is that patron exclusive?
No. Anyone can join if they can find the link in the description.
Okay. Yes. So that's a great time as well. Go check that as well. Check out certainpov.com, where you can find other great shows. Check out the Certain POV YouTube channel, where we post these episodes as well as my Superman analog videos up, and then circle back for our next episode. But until then, stay super, man.
Men of Steel is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are Jmike Folsom and Case Aiken. The show is scored and edited by Geoff Moonen. And our logo and episode art is by Case Aiken.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun, whatever fun is to you.
I'm Geoff Moonen,
And I am Matt, aka Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Geoff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.